Bile scorched the back of my throat, sour and acrid, completely overwhelming the smell of my mother's overcooked pot roast. I blinked, once, twice, the suffocating crush of the collapsed steering column, the agonizing crunch of my own ribs caving into my lungs, gone, the sharp, chemical stink of leaking antifreeze, the coppery tang of my own blood, gone, replaced by another scent, burnt gravy and cheap vanilla candles. My fingers, which a moment ago had been slick with blood, clawing desperately at the shattered windshield, now lay still, resting gently on a white linen napkin. I drew in a breath. It was ragged and thin, but it filled my lungs completely. "Claire, did you swallow a bone?" My mother's disapproving voice cut through the haze. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. She watched me over the rim of her wine glass, her brow furrowed in that familiar expression of disappointment. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. My gaze was locked on the man sitting across the table, Dominic. He was smiling, that slow, devastating smile that had ruined my sister's life and bankrupted my parents, and eventually, buried me in a shallow grave by the side of a rain-slicked highway. He looked exactly as he had the first time, the impeccably tailored, slightly too perfect navy suit, the heavy gold watch peeking from a French cuff, the hair swept back with effortless precision. My sister, Sarah, sat beside him. She was practically vibrating with triumph, one hand possessively heavy on his thigh. Her engagement ring, a massive cubic zirconia he'd sold as a flawless diamond, glittered under the dim light of the dining room chandelier. "I was just telling Dominic about your little accounting job, Claire," Sarah interjected, her voice dripping with the saccharine, condescending tone she reserved just for me. "He thinks it's adorable how you cling to your spreadsheets. In my previous life, this was the moment, the hook." I'd narrowed my eyes, feigning mild annoyance, and asked Dominic what it was he actually did. The question had launched him into his well-rehearsed monologue about international wealth management and offshore logistics. It had prompted me to dig, weeks spent poring over public records, tracing shell companies, and destroying, late nights gathering information to protect my sister. I'd presented the evidence to her. Sarah had taken my meticulously compiled dossier straight to Dominic. She told him I was jealous. She told him I couldn't find a man of my own, so I wanted to ruin her happiness. 3 days later, on Devil's Peak, my bra strap had snapped, a strange flutter in my chest. I looked at Sarah's radiant, flushed face. She was staring at me, waiting for the outburst, waiting for the fight, waiting for the jealousy she craved. I reached for my water glass. Condensation dripped down the side, icy against my skin. The cold was grounding. This was real. I was 28 again. It was November 2018. I was alive. Spreadsheets pay the bills, I said softly, my voice unnervingly calm. I offered Dominic a lifeless smile. "But it's nothing compared to the professional leagues. What was it you do again, Dominic?" "Global equity structuring." Dominic's voice was a low, rich baritone, the kind that invited you to lean in. He picked up his fork, idly twirling a piece of roast. "Primarily in emerging markets, we identify undervalued assets overseas, inject capital, restructure, and facilitate high-yield returns. The risk is high, but the dividends are." He trailed off, his gaze burning into Sarah. "Well, they allow me to spoil the people I care about. That's pretty much it." My father sat at the head of the dining table, leaning forward. I saw a familiar glint of greed flicker in his dull eyes. "You say I'm giving up." "Oh, Dad, don't bore him with work talk." Sarah giggled, patting Dominic's arm, but I noticed Dominic's eyes following Dad's words. The look was like a wolf noticing a limping sheep at the back of the flock. "Humph." In the old days, I would have slammed the table. I would have pointed out that the global equity structure of emerging markets is nothing but a bunch of meaningless jargon. I wanted to. He pressed for the name of his company. I ignored him and took a bite of cold potato. It tasted like ash, but I chewed anyway. "Sounds incredibly complex," I said deliberately, my tone flat and unremarkable, conveying only a dull, self-satisfied awe. "You must be very clever. Sarah is so lucky to have found someone like you who can handle all of this." Dominic paused, his deep eyes flicking toward me with a hint of calculation. "Liars are predators. They are hypersensitive to subtle expressions, always on guard for the skeptic in the room." He was testing whether I would show any resistance. When he found only the vacant stare of a mediocre younger sister, His shoulders relaxed just a fraction. I'm the lucky one, Dominic said calmly, kissing Sarah's temple. Sarah beamed, but I caught a flicker of something else. Her jaw was clenched, disappointed. She had been itching for a fight with me. She wanted me to envy her, so she could flaunt her perfect catch and make me bow down. Ah, my mother sighed, cutting into her meat with force. It's so nice to see Sarah finally settling down. You know, a mother always worries, especially when some children. She didn't look at me, but the air grew heavy, working hard to build a future. Claire is fine, Beatrice, my father murmured, though his attention remained entirely on Dominic. So these offshore assets, are they open pools or restricted to institutional investors? The hook was set. I watched the line go taut as Dominic shrugged with practiced humility. Institutional, usually, sir, but I occasionally make exceptions for friends and family. Call it a private consortium, if you will, like a grandfather clock. The ticking from the hallway was heavy, rhythmic. Like a countdown. I could save them right now. I could flip the table. I could scream. I could call the police, though without evidence they'd do nothing. I could warn. I looked at my mother, who had spent a lifetime comparing me to Sarah. I looked at my father, already mentally spending money that wasn't his. I looked at my sister, the woman who had watched me bleed out on a hospital bed in another life, and whispered, "Why, do you always have to ruin everything?" I carefully dabbed my mouth with a linen napkin, hiding a faint, imperceptible smile. Sarah, could you pass the salt? I asked. I didn't warn her, and I never would. Rain lashed against the single-pane window of my tiny kitchen, blurring the streetlights into smears of yellow. It had been 8 days since that dinner, 8 days of playing the clueless, supportive background character in the tragicomedy of my sister's life. I stood at the counter, cradling a chipped ceramic mug of cheap Earl Grey tea. The warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me. I was waiting. The apartment buzzer screamed. Sharp and impatient, 2 short bursts. One long, "Sarah," I pressed the intercom button. "Come up." The doors unlocked. A minute later, it opened. Sarah strode in, brandishing a dripping designer umbrella, water splattering my worn hardwood. She smelled strongly, expensive gardenia perfume and damp cashmere. Her eyes swept my cramped living room, taking in the second-hand sofa, the clutter, her nose wrinkling in instinctive, undisguised distaste. Utility bills were stacked on the coffee table. God, Claire, it smells like boiled cabbage in here, she complained, tossing her bag onto a dining chair. The pipes are leaking, I lied, taking a slow sip of my tea. What, you came out in this weather? Sarah let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through her expertly blown-out hair. She leaned against the counter, invading my space. I just needed a break. Dominic stressed with the new acquisition. His phone hasn't stopped. Singapore, London, Dubai. It's exhausting, watching him. Sounds terribly hard, I said, my voice flat. With dutiful sympathy, it is, but that's the price of success. She paused, her gaze flickering over my face, searching for envy in my eyes. Not finding it, she shifted tactics. Actually, that's partly why I'm here. Dad mentioned some CDs from Grandma's inheritance are maturing this month. I tightened my grip on the mug. In the previous timeline, this was where she'd backed me into a corner, not a request, but a demand, a pronouncement, my duty to invest in Dominic's investment group, so Dad could get a better return. I'd refused. It had sparked a huge family blowout. I was the selfish, short-sighted failure, holding them back. This time, the money was gone. 2 days ago, I'd cashed out the CDs early, paid the penalty, and quietly moved my entire life savings, a discreet trust under a newly formed LLC. I'd even switched my primary bank. On paper, I was a pauper, untouchable. Yes, I said softly, looking down into my tea, but I had to use it. Sarah froze. Use it? On what? You haven't bought anything. You're still living in this box. Medical bills. The lie came effortlessly. I patted my chest. A few months ago, the doctors found a shadow on my lung, benign, but the scans, the specialists, it wiped me out. I didn't want to worry Mom and Dad. Sarah stared, her jaw slack, not with concern, but with deep, profound annoyance and disappointment. She didn't care about the phantom shadow on my lung. She cared that the money was gone. You spent $30,000 On scans, she snapped, her voice rising. Claire, you have the worst financial sense of anyone I know. If you'd given that money to Dominic, he could have doubled it in 6 months. You could have paid off this stupid, medical debt is all about interest. I know, I whispered, shrinking into myself, playing the pathetic victim. I panicked. I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't have your head for these things, or your nerve. The flattery worked. Sarah's posture softened, her annoyance shifting into condescending pity. You were always too cautious. It's fine, Dad's going to pull from his 401k to cover Dominic's minimum buy-in anyway. I just wanted to give you a heads up. A sick, cold twist in my gut. My father is dipping into his 401k, his retirement cushion, built over 40 years of diligent middle management. Dominic gets to feast on it. You're both so generous, I murmur. My eyes glazed over on the floorboards. Dad must be over the moon, right? We're all set. Sarah grabs her tote, extracting the only thing she came here for to gain the upper hand. Anyway, I have a tasting with the caterer. Can you air this place out? Drive safe, I say. She's gone. The apartment sinks back into its muffled silence. I pour the rest of the tea down the sink, watching the brown liquid swirl down the drain. My sense of security is tested the next afternoon. I'm stepping out of the grim office building, hunching into my coat against a biting wind, when a sleek black sedan glides to the curb. Engine idling, the tinted rear window descends with a soft mechanical hum. Dominic sits in a glow of screens. The light from a laptop sharpens the aggressive angles of his face. Claire, he calls. His voice is warm, loud enough to cut through the street noise, yet intimate enough to feel like a secret. Need a ride? It's freezing out here. I stop on the sidewalk. My heart thumps against my ribs. The last time I was in a car with him, he leaned over me, hand casual on the steering wheel. While I choked on my own blood, I forced my locked muscles to relax. I walk to the curb and bend slightly to look in the window, my face a careful blank. No, Dominic, the subway's a block away. His dark eyes scan me. The charming smile is still on his face, but it dies before it reaches his eyes. They are cold, like precision instruments. Sarah mentioned you had a medical issue, missed the investment window, just bad timing. I say with a weak, self-deprecating smile, wouldn't want my pittance dragging down your portfolio. He tilts his head, searching my face for the lie, for the threat his instincts sense but can't locate. I give him nothing. I shrug, making myself small, dull, background noise. Dominic says softly, a chilling little smile playing on his lips. Take care of yourself, Claire. You too, Dominic, I reply. Take good care of Sarah. The window glides up, the sedan pulls away, its taillights bleeding red into the gray afternoon. I stand in the biting wind, a cold, feral smile finally breaking across my face. Take everything from them, I think, all of it. Dust motes dance in the harsh afternoon sun streaming through my parents' living room window. It's late December, and the house smells overwhelmingly of pine needles and cinnamon pie, a cloying, artificial sweetness. It coats the back of my tongue. My mother has gone all out for Sarah's impromptu engagement party. She hired a local caterer, insisted on real florist-style table arrangements, and bought a new cocktail dress she absolutely cannot afford. But the concept of afford evaporated the moment Dominic stepped into this house. Front door. I stand in a corner of the room, holding a plastic cup of ginger ale. It fizzes quietly against my upper lip. I was wearing an old gray sweater, deliberately blending into the beige wallpaper, watching the tragedy unfold with the detached coldness of a mortician. David, you must try these crab puffs, my mother exclaimed excitedly, practically shoving a silver tray into my father's chest. My father waved her off. His face was flushed, his expression dazed, not from alcohol, but from the intoxicating thrill of feeling wealthy. He was holding forth by the fireplace with 2 golf buddies, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand, gesturing wildly. I'm telling you, it's a closed-circuit system, Dad was boasting, his voice cutting through the low hum of jazz. Dominic secured me a spot in the primary trench. You wouldn't believe the quarterly projections. It reminds me of my old days. Mutual funds look like a child's piggy bank. One of his friends, a cautious man named Robert, frowned into his drink. I don't know, Dave, a guaranteed 20% return in this market sounds a little too good to be true. Who is this guy? The underwriter. In the previous timeline, I had clung to Robert's skepticism. I had joined the discussion with fervor. Armed with printouts exposing Ponzi schemes and unregulated offshore accounts, I had tried to build a coalition of reason, and my father had shamed me, calling me a small-minded, resentful girl who couldn't stand to see the family succeed. This time, I took a slow sip of ginger ale. I let the silence hang. Well, it's proprietary. Dominic's smooth, mellifluous voice slid into the conversation. He emerged from the hallway, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal sport coat. He clapped a hand on my father's shoulder, a gesture of false intimacy that turned my stomach. We exploit the differentials between emerging market currencies. Retail brokers aren't privy to this, and that's precisely why the yields are so exceptional. He smiled at Robert. It was a smile with teeth, warm, confident, and slightly condescending, but it's certainly not for everyone. You need the stomach for the initial capital lockup. Dad immediately puffed out his chest, eager to prove his stomach was strong enough. Exactly. You have to have skin in the game to make real money. I just rolled the remaining equity from the house into the second tranche. I swallowed, my throat clicking. He'd done it faster this time. Dominic's psychological manipulation had escalated, likely because I wasn't there to interfere. My parents' corpus was already fully liquid, and Dominic was holding the bucket. A familiar, sharp ache bloomed behind my ribs, the phantom weight of a steering wheel pressing into my sternum. I looked at my father's aging face. The deep creases around his eyes, the thinning gray hair, a wave of fierce, suffocating guilt nearly swallowed me whole. They were my parents, flawed, yes, blatantly preferential and cruel in the previous timeline, but still, they were heading for the slaughterhouse. I clenched my plastic cup until the side cracked with a sharp snap. Dominic's head turned, his dark, predatory eyes locked onto me from across the room. He excused himself from the others and glided toward me, parting, navigating the small crowd of party guests with effortless grace. "Claire," he said, stopping before me, mere inches away. He smelled of expensive cedar cologne and mint, hiding in the corner, not enjoying the celebration at all. "I'm just catching my breath," I replied, my voice dull and lifeless. "It's a great party," Dominic murmured, his gaze fixed on my face. "Your father is a brave man." He began probing again, searching for clues. Few people his age are willing to completely overhaul their financial strategies. "He trusts you," I said simply. I met his eyes, forcing myself to keep them wide open, like a cow's, without a hint of suspicion. "Sarah is overjoyed. For him, that's what matters most." Dominic tilted his head, a faint crease appeared between his perfectly groomed eyebrows. I was like a puzzle piece that didn't fit into his otherwise flawless image. Scammers expect to encounter greedy accomplices or aggressive opponents. They don't know how to deal with indifferent compliance. "What about you?" he asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Don't you want a piece of the pie, Claire? Sarah mentioned you. I got a small sum. Too bad you locked it away." "I'm afraid of risks," I lied, shrugging and saying self-deprecatingly, "I like my little spreadsheets. I like knowing exactly where my money goes." Dominic let out a short, dismissive sigh, the tension in his shoulders dissipating. He categorized me as a pitiful wretch, a coward, and a waste. Well, the world needs worker bees too. He turned and walked back to Sarah, who was standing by the bushes, holding forth. She was showing off her fake diamonds to envious friends. I watched him go. Worker bee. I felt the metallic taste of adrenaline flood my mouth. Keep going. Thinking this, I walked to the back porch, letting the biting winter air assault my body and mind. The sky was a gloomy purple, as if soaked in venom. Snow was coming. I leaned against the cold wooden railing, wrapping my arms around myself. I had to hold my ground. I had to let them fall, because if I warned them, I would die again, this time. I was determined to outlive them all. Frost slowly crept along the edges of the boutique's floor-to-ceiling windows, thick and crystalline. It blurred the busy downtown traffic into smears of gray and red. It was late February. The honeymoon phase of the scam was beginning to rot. I sat on a velvet-cushioned sofa, faintly smelling of sterile fabric cleaner and expensive perfume. In front of me, Sarah stood on a circular pedestal draped in ivory silk and French lace. "Oh, I think this is it." Sarah held her breath, staring at her reflection in the gilded full-length mirror. Her cheeks were flushed, but without the natural glow of a few months ago. Instead, there was a tense, frantic look. She was buzzing with energy now. Her eyes were slightly sunken, and she was biting the inside of her lip, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. The elegant wedding dress consultant in a black dress clapped her hands. "You look stunning in it, with alterations. It'll be around £12,000, shall we call it a deal?" Sarah hesitated, if only for a fleeting moment, but to me it was as loud as a gunshot. "Yes," Sarah said, her voice pitched too high. She reached into her designer handbag, swiping a platinum card, her long nails frantically scraping the bottom of the bag, the leather interior. She handed the heavy metal card to the consultant, who swiftly took it to the front cash register. I turned over. I placed a bridal magazine on my lap, pretending to read an article about floral arrangements. My heart beat slowly and heavily against my sternum. I knew what was coming. I had lived through this month before, in the previous timeline. This was the week when Dominic's offshore crime syndicate was supposed to issue the first dividend checks. It should have been settled by now. My father had been eagerly awaiting a massive payout. Instead, he received an email about a temporary account freeze due to international banking regulations, standard procedure, a stalling tactic. Stringing him along before vanishing. "Dominic would have wept to see me like this," Sarah said, though she was looking at the floor, not the mirror. "He's been under a lot of stress lately. He's in Dubai now, or maybe Zurich. His schedule is all over the place. It must be hard for you with him away," I murmured, flipping through the glossy pages. "It is, but he's finalizing that huge payout for Dad, so it's worth it." She let out a crisp laugh. "Dad's been on edge all week, waiting for the wire to hit," the consultant returned. Her professional, ingratiating smile vanished, replaced by a stiff, awkward expression. She held the platinum card between two fingers. "I'm sorry, Sarah," the woman said softly, glancing at me as if I were an intruder. "It declined." Sarah froze. She looked pale, almost sickly. "That's impossible. Try it again. It's an unlimited card." "Ma'am, I've tried twice. It's showing the transaction was declined. The bank has frozen the account. There must be some mistake," Sarah snapped, her tone turning venomous. She snatched the card back. "Dominic's firm manages the account. They might have flagged it for fraud because it's a large purchase. Let's just put the dress on hold. I need to make a..." The phone rang. Sarah practically leaped off the platform, clutching the heavy silk gown in her fists, storming toward the dressing room. I remained seated on the velvet sofa. I didn't offer to pay. I didn't offer comfort. I just sat there in the boutique, feeling the crisp, empty air, listening to the muffled, frantic sounds of my sister dialing behind the heavy velvet curtain. "Ring, ring, ring, pick up, Dom, come on," I heard her whisper, then the familiar beep of voicemail. I closed the bride's phone. I picked up the magazine, placing it neatly on the glass coffee table. The boutique's pristine silence was utterly shattered, replaced only by Sarah's ragged breathing from the dressing room. The collapse wouldn't be an explosion. It would be a slow, suffocating choke. Dominic had already begun moving funds, shifting assets into untraceable crypto wallets or offshore shells. The declined platinum card was the first warning light on the dashboard. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out. A text from my father. "Claire, Dad, have you heard from Sarah today? Can't reach Dominic. The bank says the distribution number he gave me is invalid, probably just a misdial, but I need to reach him." I stared at the screen glowing, the text slightly blurred, a strange, dark cocktail of emotions rising, pity, fear, a cold, sickening sense of vindication. They chose him. They looked at my years of loyalty, my cautious warnings from the previous life, and chose the glittering emptiness instead, the predator's promise. They threw me to the wolves. Now the wolves were at the gate. I typed a reply, my thumb flying over the glass. "Claire, I'm with Sarah now. She can't reach him either. Dad, I'm sure it's just a misdial. Don't worry." I hit send, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and waited for my reply. My sister emerged from the dressing room to face the ruins of her life, the smell of burnt coffee, that was the scent of the financial industry. The air of decay hung thick in my parents' kitchen, bitter and weary, clinging to the floral wallpaper and the pale yellow curtains my mother had washed since I was 10. Every spring I would sit at the composite wood island and scratch a shallow groove into its surface with my fingernail. It was early March. Outside, the frost was beginning to melt, turning the front lawn into a muddy brown swamp. Inside, the silence was suffocating. My father paced back and forth. He no longer looked like the confident, swaggering man from the engagement party 3 months ago. His skin had turned ashen and sallow, sagging heavily around his jaw. He wore the same wrinkled shirt from yesterday. The collar was open, revealing faint yellow sweat stains under his arms. In his right hand, he clutched his phone as if it were a grenade about to explode. "It's just following orders," Dad muttered, as if to himself. His voice was thin and raspy. "Mutual compliance, the Patriot Act, anti-money laundering, it flags large transfers." Dominic had explained it. He said this could happen. My mother stood beside him. She was mechanically scrubbing an already clean pot in the sink. The rhythmic scraping of steel wool against the Teflon coating set my teeth on edge. She wore no makeup. In the span of a week, the usually sharp, critical matriarch who nitpicked my clothing choices was gone, replaced by that hollow-eyed woman who flinched every time a car passed the window. "Of course he would, David," Mom said softly, her voice trembling. She didn't look at him, just kept scrubbing. "He's a professional. We just have to wait." I took a slow sip of the undrinkable burnt coffee. It coated my tongue like ash. It was a sharp, jagged shard of guilt. A wave of pain hit me, a twisting, wrenching sensation in my chest. It was a visceral ache, heavy and suffocating. These were my parents. They raised me, fed me, bandaged my scraped knees. Watching them rot from the inside out was agony. I felt a desperate urge rise in my throat, to scream the truth, to grab my father's trembling shoulders, then tell him it was all lies, that Dominic had bled him dry. But I blinked, and the memory of cold rain pelting my skin surfaced. Shards of broken windshield flying toward my face. I recalled the coppery tang of my own blood. I remembered my father in a past life, standing in a hospital room, refusing to look at me, telling the police it must have been me driving, that I'd been reckless because I was so upset about Sarah's wedding. Even in my death, he was still protecting Dominic. The guilt turned cold and brittle. I swallowed the coffee. I asked, "Did Dominic say how long the enforcement hold might last?" My tone was mild, laced with a touch of naive curiosity, sounding harmless and innocuous. Dad stopped pacing. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot and frantic. He looked like a cornered animal, desperately trying to remember how to fight back. "A few weeks, a month, it depends on the SEC, but he's already sent me the paperwork to expedite the release." He slapped his phone down on the kitchen countertop, then rubbed his face, pressing his palms into his eye sockets until his knuckles turned white. Dad said in a low, somewhat hoarse voice, "The only issue is the tariff. When releasing funds from an offshore custodial account, the recipient, that's me, has to prepay the tax. It's standard procedure." "How much is the tax?" I asked softly. 50,000, Mom blurted out. The steel wool fell from her hand, landing in the soapy water with a dull, pathetic plop. She finally turned to look at me, her face pale, lips trembling. "Claire needed $50,000, demanded it be wired to a clearinghouse in Malta by Friday, or the entire portfolio would be locked. 3 years of probate, the sunk cost trap, the final cruel squeeze, ghosting." Dominic was brilliant, but he was also profoundly parasitic. He drained their savings, leveraged their home, and now, knowing they were panicked, he was dangling a lifeline that required just a little more blood. "We can do this," Dad said, his voice rising, gaining momentum. It was frantic, desperate. "I talked to the man at the lodge, Robert, the coward. Got cold feet, but I can apply for a bridge loan, use the life insurance. Pay out as collateral. Sarah still has her wedding fund. We just need to pull it together. Once the transfer clears, we'll have 5 million in liquid assets. 50 grand is a rounding error." He was shouting now, trying to convince himself with volume. The front door slammed. It shut with a heavy, definitive thud that echoed through the silent, tense house. A moment later, Sarah walked into the kitchen. She looked terrible. Her carefully highlighted hair was pulled into a greasy, haphazard bun. She wore expensive, name-brand sweatpants, but they hung loosely on her. The aura of smug, impending bridehood was utterly gone. "Sarah," Dad said, lunging toward her, grabbing her forearm. Did you talk to him? Did you? Will Dominic call you back? Sarah pulled her arm free, her face twisting into an ugly, defensive sneer. No, Dad, I didn't. His assistant said he's in a boardroom in Geneva. No phones. Don't suffocate me. Just stop. I'm not suffocating you, Dad roared back. A fleck of spit hitting the counter. I'm trying to save our lives. If we don't wire that tariff by Friday, Sarah, we lose the house. We lose everything. Well, figure it out then, Sarah shrieked, her voice sharp and hysterical. Tears were tracking down her lower lashes, smudging her mascara. You're the head of the household. You figure it out. Dominic is doing everything he can. He's working himself to the bone for us. And you're panicking over a stupid tax. She turned her furious, tear-streaked face toward me. I sat perfectly still, my hands wrapped tightly around the warm ceramic mug, sighs and gasps. And you, Sarah hissed, a trembling finger pointed at my chest. Sitting there judging us. You have the money, Grandma said. Don't tell me you spent 30 grand on medical bills. Claire, I know you're lying. You always hoard it. I looked up at her. In a past life, that was the moment she threw my meticulously organized investigation file in my face. The moment she condemned me. I don't have that feeling, Sarah, I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. I'm sorry, I really am. Sarah stared at me, her chest heaving. For a split second, I saw a flash of pure, unadulterated hatred in her eyes. It was the look of a drowning person realizing, the only piece of driftwood nearby is covered in spikes. She whirled around and stormed out of the kitchen. I looked back at my father. He was staring blankly out the window at the muddy lawn, his hands shaking so violently he had to grip the edge of the sill. They were trying to stay upright. The slaughterhouse door had shut behind them, and they still thought they were just waiting for a train. The wind rattled the panes. The loose pane of glass in my living room window rattled with a persistent, rhythmic tap, like bony fingers drumming on the sill. It was late April. The long-awaited spring had finally arrived, bringing with it an unrelenting drizzle that seemed to have plunged the entire city into a perpetual state of dampness. The twilight was heavy and depressing. My apartment doorbell didn't ring. Instead, there was a series of sharp, heavy knocks. I set my laptop down on the coffee table. I'd been browsing real estate listings in another state, quietly mapping out my exit strategy. I walked over and peered through the peephole before unlatching and pulling open the door. Sarah stood in the hallway. She looked like a ghost. Her skin had a faint, bruised pallor, with deep purple shadows under her eyes. She wore pajamas under a trench coat and expensive-looking loafers that were thoroughly ruined by the puddles outside. The sharp, expensive scent she usually carried was gone, replaced by the smell of stale sweat and cheap wine. Let me in, she commanded, but her voice lacked its usual authority and sharpness. It was hoarse and grating. I stepped aside. She shuffled past me, rainwater dripping onto the worn floorboards. She didn't complain about the smell of cabbage or glance at my cheap furniture. Just collapsed onto. She sank into the middle cushion of my second-hand sofa, burying her face in her hands. He's gone, she whispered. The words hung in the silent apartment. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. A soft, definitive click. I leaned against the heavy wood, crossing my arms over my chest. I didn't feel a flicker of triumph, no surge of adrenaline, just a deep, heavy emptiness. I asked who, playing my part dutifully to the end. Dominic. Sarah's hands fell away from her face. The skin was pulled taut, revealing the sharp angles of her cheekbones. His phone is disconnected. His company's website is gone. Just a 404 error. Dad tried contacting the hosting office in Malta, but the bank said the routing number belongs to a defunct shell company in the Caymans. The money, it's gone. Claire. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, lifeless, and full of terror. To cover the tax payment, Dad took out a high-interest loan from a disreputable lender downtown. Using the car as collateral, they came and repossessed Mom's SUV this morning. I pushed off from the door and slowly walked over to the armchair opposite the sofa. Sitting down, I settled in, maintaining a comfortable posture. My face carefully masked shock and sympathy. Sarah, I don't understand. I lied softly. Dominic was your fiancé. Why would he do this? Because he's a con artist, she shrieked, the sound echoing in the empty loft. She sprang up from the couch, pacing the small room like a trapped animal. It was all a lie, the ring was fake, I had it appraised by a jeweler yesterday, it's all gone, he drained our accounts, Claire, he ruined us. She stopped pacing and turned to me, the panic in her eyes suddenly turned cold, violently shifting into a desperate, calculating greed. She dropped to her knees in front of my chair, grabbing my knees with cold, damp hands. You have to help us, Sarah pleaded, her fingers digging painfully into my jeans. You have savings, I know you do. You have to give the money to Dad, if he misses the first payment on that bridge loan, they're going to foreclose on the house, within 30 days. You have to save them. I looked down at her. My beautiful, arrogant sister knelt on my cheap carpet, begging for the very money she once mocked me for saving. I told you, Sarah, I whispered, the money is gone. Stop lying, she screamed, her nails digging deep into my skin. You're only doing this to punish me, you've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I found someone like Dominic, so you're sitting here gloating now. Do you want to see us on the streets? I stared at her. Her breathtaking narcissistic audacity was truly astonishing. Even now, buried beneath the ruins of a scam, she remained so. After being brought home, she made herself the victim of my imagined jealousy, and I gently but firmly tried to reason with her. I unclenched my fingers from my knees and stood up, looking down at her. I warned you about him, I said. Sarah froze on the floor, unable to move. She looked up at me, confused. What? No, you didn't. You never said a word. She was right. In this timeline, I hadn't spoken, but the truth had leaked out, a confession to the ghost of the girl who died on Devil's Peak. Didn't I warn you to be careful? I continued to stare down at her, my voice turning cold. I told you to look closely, but you didn't want to. You wanted the shiny things. You wanted the superiority. You sold out Dad for a fake diamond and lies. How can you say such things? She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. He tricked us. He tricked Dad, I said coldly. Dominic didn't trick Dad. Dominic held up a mirror to Dad. He used Dad's own greed against him. You both jumped into the fire because you were too busy staring at the gold at the bottom of the pit. I walked to the front door, opened it, and let the cold, damp hallway air rush in. You have to go, Sarah. She collapsed to the floor, her shoulders trembling with wretched sobs for a full minute. When she finally realized I wouldn't comfort her, she struggled to her feet. The look she gave me was one of pure, absolute hatred, and it almost made me laugh. You're a monster, she said as she walked past me into the hallway. They're your parents, and you let them do this. Go to hell, I whispered. Drive safely. I closed the door and walked to the window, watching the rain wash the grime from the glass. The apartment was silent. I had won. I was safe. But as I stood there in the silent gloom, the taste of stale coffee on the back of my tongue, I realized, the most terrible truth is, revenge doesn't fix what's broken inside you. It just makes you comfortable with the darkness. Pitch black. The cardboard boxes gave off a distinct, dry smell. It was a mix of old paper, stale air, and deep frustration. Late May in my parents' house was stifling and humid. The air conditioning had been turned off a week ago. The utility company didn't care about offshore bank fraud or defaults. They only cared about bank routing numbers that actually worked. I stood in the foyer, my sneakers slightly sticking to the hardwood floor where a Persian rug used to be. The rug was gone. The house, along with the antique grandfather clock and the dining room chandelier, had been sold to the liquidators. Like the people inside, it had been hollowed out piece by piece. I walked into the kitchen. My mother, Beatrice, was wrapping a chipped porcelain gravy boat in yesterday's newspaper. Her hands, usually well manicured, trembled violently. The skin around her knuckles was red, swollen, and cracked from days of desperately scrubbing baseboards. Stripped of its natural oils in her desperate, irrational attempt to make the house presentable. I need to make myself look presentable for the bank's foreclosure inspector. Mom, don't bother wrapping it, I said softly, stepping over a pile of black trash bags. The liquidators won't take chipped china. My mother didn't look up, just kept wrapping her body. Her movements were stiff, robotic. She was wearing a faded cotton shirt with a prominent coffee stain on the collar. This matriarch, who had spent my entire childhood striving to project a perfect upper-middle-class image, was completely gone. It belongs with the set, she murmured, her voice hoarse from disuse. The set has to be complete. If it's not, they'll say we broke it. I reached out and gently placed my hand on hers, stopping the frantic rustle of newspaper. Her skin was icy cold. Despite the stifling heat in the kitchen, she finally looked at me, her eyes, they were hollow, shocked pools of glass. She no longer had the energy to resent me, the anger she once held, the fires she had when Sarah told her I refused to bail them out, had burned to ash weeks ago, leaving only a brittle layer of dust. Your father is in the garage, she whispered, her gaze drifting past my shoulder to the empty living room. He's looking for the title to the lawnmower. He thinks the pawn shop on 4th Street will give him $200 for it. A sour taste rose in my mouth. $200. 3 months ago, this man was boasting about his $5 million liquid portfolio. He'd mocked my savings. Now he was rummaging in a sweltering garage, pawning gardening tools for grocery money. I released her hand and walked to the side door. The garage was an oven. Dust motes hung suspended in the air, illuminated by the harsh yellow light from the cracked automatic door that no longer worked properly. My father was sitting on an upturned plastic bucket. He wasn't looking for the lawnmower title. He was just sitting there, staring at an oil stain on the concrete floor. He looked 10 years older. His hair, once a distinguished salt and pepper, was pure white. He'd lost so much weight that his shoulders caved inward. His spine curved as if an invisible foot were pressing down on his neck. Dad, I said. He didn't jump, just turned his head slowly. When he saw me, a wet, pathetic light flickered in his eyes. Shame, he rasped. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his scrawny throat. You shouldn't be here. It's too dusty, bad for the lungs. Your shadow was blocking my light. My chest tightened. It was a bizarre, twisted defense mechanism. He was clinging to my lie about medical bills because it was the only way he could accept my refusal to give him money. If I were sick, it was understandable. If I were healthy and still refused to save him, the reality of his own stupidity would crush him completely. I'm fine, Dad, I said, leaning against the doorframe. The wood felt rough through my thin t-shirt. Have you heard from the lawyer? He let out a dry, grating laugh that sounded like sandpaper. Lawyers cost money, Claire. We saw a public defender. He said the money's gone. It was moved through 3 different crypto exchanges before it vanished into Malta. The FBI took a statement, but they practically laughed. They see this 10 times a week. He looked down at his trembling hands. Claire, I signed it. I sold the house. I gave up my retirement for a well-dressed young man. I crossed my arms over my chest, digging my nails deep into my own biceps to steady myself. A part of me, the part that still remembered the painful sensation of broken ribs on Devil's Peak, wanted to nod. I wanted to say, I told him this was the price of arrogance, that he had ignored my warnings in his previous life. And now look at him, this was his retribution. But looking at the broken, hollow man sitting on a bucket in the sweltering garage, victory tasted like bitter bile. There was no poetry in this justice, only ugliness, only sorrow. Where's Sarah? I asked, trying to change the subject. My father's jaw tightened, the muscles under his eyes twitching rapidly. She left yesterday, packed a suitcase of designer clothes, and called a friend. She said she couldn't stay there any longer. She never wanted to live in this house again. She said the stress was too much, that she was breaking out in rashes. He let out a long sigh, covering his face with his dirty hands. She didn't even say goodbye to your mother, just left, the child they had poured everything into, cherished like a treasure, because, the moment the gold turned to lead, she abandoned them. I reached for the thick white envelope I pulled from the back pocket of my jeans. I walked over to the bucket and tossed it onto his lap. He flinched, looking at me. I leaned down to examine it closely. What is this? It's $3,000 in cash, I said, my voice full of surprise. My tone was flat, enough for a deposit on a cheap rental apartment and a month's worth of groceries. Don't put it in the bank. Don't tell Sarah you have this money. Find a place for you and Mom to live before the sheriff comes to change the locks next week. He stared at the envelope, his hands hovering over it, trembling violently. Then he broke down. A loud, ugly, gut-wrenching sob burst from his throat. He hunched over, clutching the envelope tightly to his chest, weeping with a kind of utter, unreserved, child-abandoning despair. I didn't touch him, didn't offer a single word of comfort. I turned and walked away, out of the sweltering garage, leaving him to cry alone in the dark. Hospitals always freeze my blood. First comes the smell, a chilling scent of antiseptic, industrial bleach, rubbing alcohol, and the stale odor of burnt coffee. Then comes the sound, the squeak of rubber shoes on the floor, the rustle of smooth linens, the muffled sound of pages turning over. The intercom, and the rhythmic, persistent beeping of heart monitors. It was early July. I sat on a plastic chair in the emergency room waiting area of St. Jude's Hospital. The chair was hard, digging into my lower back, but I barely felt the discomfort. My gaze remained fixed on the double doors leading to the emergency room. This was the very hospital where I had died in the previous timeline. I could almost feel the ghost of my past self, lying in one of the back rooms, a tube down my throat, bleeding out from internal injuries while Sarah complained. Her voice echoed down the hallway, complaining about how my accident had disrupted her wedding plans. My phone vibrated on my lap. I ignored it. I had been sitting here for 4 hours. At 6 in the morning, my mother called me from the cramped 2-bedroom apartment I had helped them rent. She was hysterical. My father had collapsed while cooking oatmeal in the kitchen. A massive myocardial infarction, a fatal heart attack. 3 months of cortisol levels and stress had done this. The double doors swung open, and a doctor in blue scrubs walked out. He looked exhausted, rubbing the bridge of his nose through his metal-framed glasses. He glanced around the nearly empty waiting room. David's family. I stood up. In the quiet room, my knees let out a loud crack. I'm his daughter. The doctor approached. He didn't. He offered a reassuring smile, but his eyes held a professional detachment, as if he made a living delivering bad news. We've stabilized him. We placed a stent in his left anterior descending artery. It was severely blocked. He'll be in the ICU for a few days, and the recovery will be very slow. But he's alive, I said. It wasn't a question. He is alive, but his heart muscle has sustained significant damage. The doctor hesitated, lowering his voice. Has your father been under unusual stress lately? His blood pressure readings indicate he's been in a state of chronic, severe panic. I let out a short, humorless sigh. You could say he lost everything a few months ago. The doctor gave a sympathetic, grave nod. He'd clearly heard this story before. I understand. A social worker will come by to discuss medical insurance and payment plans with him. He'll need a lot of medication and absolute rest. Another shock could be fatal. Thank you, doctor. He walked away. I sank back into the hard plastic chair, staring at the scuffed floor. The medical bills alone would bankrupt them all over again. It was a cascade of failure. Dominic hadn't just taken their money, he'd taken my father's physical health, shattered my mother's spirit, and broken the fragile thing that had held the family together. The heavy doors to the waiting room slid open with a mechanical hiss. I looked up. Sarah stood there, a different person. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a cheap, wrinkled dress and worn sandals. Her hair, which had once required meticulous upkeep, was thinning. The $300 a month maintenance, halved and haphazardly pulled into a claw clip. But it was her face that truly shocked me. The smug, superior smile that had been her default expression for most of her life was utterly gone. She looked haggard, terrified. She spotted me and shuffled hesitantly across the tiles. She didn't sit. She stood before me, wringing her hands. Together, Mom called me. Sarah whispered. Her voice was thin. Is Dad dying? No, I said, leaning my head back against the wall and looking at her coolly. They put in a stent. He's in the ICU now. Sarah exhaled a long, shuddering breath and collapsed into the chair next to me, covering her face with her hands. Oh, God, it's a nightmare, a never-ending nightmare. She smelled faintly of stale cigarettes. In the previous timeline, she'd been fanatically anti-smoking. Stress was killing her almost as much as it was killing my father. Sarah, did you find a job? I asked her, my tone casual, as if discussing the weather. She flinched. I'm a receptionist at a dental clinic. It pays barely above minimum wage. I had to sell my car to pay the rent on my studio. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. Claire, I can't do this. I don't know how to live like this. Every time the phone rings, I think it's a collections agency, or the police. The police aren't looking for you. I said flatly, you didn't commit fraud, but I brought him into the house. She nearly shrieked it, drawing a sharp look from the triage nurse behind the glass partition. Sarah lowered her voice, her hands going back to her face. I brought him to Dad. It's my fault. It's all my fault. It was wrong. I sat in the hospital's bitingly cold air, listening to my sister finally confess. It was the moment I had dreamed of in my past life, the moment of taking responsibility, the moment of vindication. I had wanted her to break down. I had wanted her to realize what she had done to us, but as I watched her trembling shoulders, all I felt was a cold, heavy exhaustion. You didn't pull, you pulled the trigger, Sarah, I said softly, my gaze fixed on the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. You just handed him the gun. Dad had turned the barrel on himself. Sarah slowly lifted her head. She looked at me, her face pale, mascara smudged. Why are you so calm? How can you sit there so calmly when the whole world is over? I slowly turned my head to meet her eyes. My gaze was empty, like the dead silence in my chest. Because my world ended a long time ago. I whispered, I've just been watching the rest of you slowly catch up. Frost had formed along the edges of the windshield, like a thin, shimmering lace, crackling under the scrape of my plastic ice scraper. It was late November, exactly a year since that beef stew dinner, exactly a year since I last sat across from. I had decided to let the predator devour my family alive. I tossed the scraper onto the passenger seat and climbed into my car. The sedan was icy, the engine let out a sharp, metallic whine before settling into a smooth idle. I blew on my hands, cupping them. I watched my breath turn to white mist in the frigid cabin air. My phone buzzed once in the cup holder, a news alert. I didn't need to look at the screen to know what it was. The trial had ended yesterday. Dominic, whose real name was Gregory Miller, was a twice-convicted con man from a fading Pennsylvania coal town. He had been sentenced to 85 years in federal prison for orchestrating a multi-million-dollar telemarketing scam. He hadn't just ruined my life, my parents, he had slaughtered over 30 families up and down the East Coast. I shifted the car into drive and pulled away from the curb. The government-subsidized apartment building where my parents now lived was a brutalist concrete block across the river, forever smelling of damp plaster and mildew, tobacco, and cheap cooking oil. I parked in the visitor's lot and hefted a heavy canvas bag of groceries from the back. After sitting, I climbed 3 flights of concrete stairs because the elevator had been broken since August. I knocked twice on the door of 3B, and my mother answered. Beatrice looked like a dried, brittle leaf. She wore a worn cardigan over a faded nightgown, her hair entirely white and thinning at the crown. She didn't smile when she saw me. She shuffled aside, her slippers making a dull rhythm on the peeling linoleum. I brought the low-sodium soup Dad likes, I said softly, stepping into the cramped, stuffy apartment. A radiator in the corner hissed, a slow drip of rusty water seeping into a warped plastic Tupperware container. Put it on the counter, Mom rasped. Not looking at me, she shuffled back to her spot on the sunken chair, the tweed sofa. My father lay on a medical recliner by the window, an oxygen tube looped over his ears, a clear plastic probe tucked into his nose. The machine beside him hummed with a heavy, rhythmic sound. He was watching the small boxy television perched on a milk crate across the room. A local news anchor was talking about Gregory Miller. He showed a courtroom sketch even with a crude charcoal pencil. The artist captured that chilling, well-trained smirk. I set down the groceries and began placing cans into the empty pantry. The silence in the room was heavier than the suffocating humidity. It was as quiet as a graveyard. Compensation is impossible, they said. Dad suddenly spoke up. His voice was choked, the raspy gasps making my own throat ache. The prosecutor called this morning. The money is gone. He embezzled the funds. It was all transferred through unregulated offshore channels. We won't get a single cent back. I paused, a heavy can of cold black beans clenched in my hand. I'm sorry, Dad. The apology was hollow, and we both knew it. I wasn't sorry the money was gone. I was just tired of watching the aftermath. The front door lock clicked open with a metallic clatter. Sarah walked in. She was wearing a navy blue polo shirt with the logo of a discount pharmacy chain embroidered on the chest pocket. Her hands, which once sported $200 manicures, were now dry and cracked. Her nails were bitten down to the quick. She stopped in the narrow doorway, seeing me standing by the kitchen counter. We hadn't spoken since the hospital waiting room 4 months ago. Sarah's gaze shifted between me, the shopping bags I'd brought, and the oxygen tank keeping us breathing. Dad was still alive. A flurry of complex emotions flickered across her weary face. resentment, deep shame, and despair. She was painfully nostalgic for the life she had once carelessly squandered, but the anger was gone, that fiery, arrogant narcissism had vanished, the feeling that had defined my sister for 28 years was completely absent. They sentenced him, Sarah whispered. Her voice choked. I replied simply. She slowly walked to the kitchen island and tossed her cheap plastic purse onto the laminate floor. She looked down at her bare left hand. I thought the weight of that fake diamond still seemed to linger on her ring finger. Sarah swallowed hard, a tear sliding down her lashes and tracing a clear path through the dust on her cheek. I thought I'd feel at peace if they put him in a cage, she said. I thought that would fix it, but nothing's changed, has it? We're still here. No, I said, folding the empty canvas bag. It doesn't change anything. I walked past her. The smell of her cheap pharmacist uniform, a depressing mix of alcohol and old cardboard, filled the cramped space. I had done my duty. Every week, I bought groceries. Every month, I anonymously paid the electric bill so Dad's oxygen machine wouldn't shut off. I had kept them from starving, but I refused to save them, because saving them meant sacrificing myself, and I had already paid that price once before. I couldn't stay in this tomb any longer. The air was thin and suffocating, as if haunted by the ghosts of their own greed. Claire, Dad gasped. From his chair, I stopped, my hand still on the doorknob. If you had known, Dad asked, his voice trembling with a pitiful, desperate longing for forgiveness. I would never have given him a chance. If you had seen the signs, would you have warned us? I looked back. I looked at the man who had sacrificed his family's stability for a greedy fantasy. I looked at my sister, who had willingly offered me as a sacrifice to a sociopath for his approval. I looked at my mother, who had witnessed it all, as she scolded me for dirtying the floor. My chest, everything was intact. The phantom pain from broken ribs and punctured lungs, along with those unbearable memories of the past, had finally vanished. I breathed in the fresh air. No, Dad, I whispered softly, the truth slipping out like a gentle sigh. I won't do that. I turned around, twisted the doorknob, stepped into the cold, empty hallway, and forever closed the door to my past life. Story 2, transmigrated into the true heiress of a tragic novel. The system demands I collect regret points from everyone, but the moment I open my eyes, my own brother forces me to act like a dog. I immediately thrust a sharp weapon into his throat. The system suddenly erupts with a piercing alarm. Host, if the person is dead, how are you going to collect regret points? As soon as the words were spoken, the regret points skyrocketed. I scoffed lightly. What's the matter? Who said you have to kill the female lead to collect regret points? It's just a story about death. So what does it matter who dies? Stupid girl, are you blind? The woman's shrill voice pierced my eardrums painfully. Kneeling on the ground, I looked up at her dizzily, and a sharp, unkind face abruptly filled my vision. She crouched beside me, tugging on my ear while habitually raising her hand. I reached out to block it. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide with surprise, and her mouth fell open. You dare to defy me? I remained silent, staring intently at her. She said angrily, Su Tong, I'll beat you to death. Su Tong, is that the original owner's name? What did she do wrong? Why is she being bullied by this person? With the woman's familiar shouting, large chunks of the plot flooded into her mind, causing an intense headache. It turned out that the person before her was Cheng Yen, the Su family's nanny. In the book, the female lead Su Tong is the real daughter who was swapped at birth. From a young age, she suffered from oppression and abuse, with not a single patch of unblemished skin on her body. Even after the truth came to light and Su Tong was recognized by her own family, Cheng Yen refused to let go of the original host, especially in front of her own daughter, Suanan. Taking advantage of the original host's lack of importance in the family, she subjected her to constant beatings and scoldings. Today is no exception. I was slightly taken aback, not quite understanding this kind of plot. I entered this book to collect the regret values of all the characters, but the female lead is so stifled, living a life worse than a beggar on the street. What is there for the enemy to regret? What exactly is there to regret? Su Tong, let go, you little bastard. Cheng Yen tried to break free from the grip. I pressed my fingertips hard, gripping her arm tightly. Shut up, you're so noisy. With that, I backhanded her across the face. Her cheek quickly reddened and swelled as she stared at me in shock. Taking advantage of the gap I leaned on the kitchen cabinet and struggled to stand up, perhaps because I had been kneeling for too long. My knees ached terribly. Cheng Yen snapped back to reality and exclaimed in shock, "How dare you stand up? If the young master finds out, he will surely kill you." I rub my knees, and in my daze, a sentence echoes in my ears, "Su Tong, from now on, you can only be a dog, understand?" It seems to have been said by the original owner's own brother, all because of that one sentence. Su Tong knelt for a full year, usually moving around by crawling on the ground. Cheng Yen covered her face, seething with resentment as she said, "You just wait, you wretched girl, I'm going to tell the young master right now and see how he punishes you." Her voice grew increasingly shrill and piercing. "It sounds awful." I instinctively grabbed her wrist. I decided to adopt the simplest and most direct method to collect regret points. Cheng Yen sneered disdainfully. "Scared now? Better give it to me." Before she could finish speaking, I suddenly pressed forward, tightly covering her mouth. Then grabbed a knife and plunged it straight into her chest. Her eyes widened abruptly as she struggled desperately. "Mph." I paid no heed, thrusting the knife in and out, shredding her lungs to pieces in mere seconds. My face was reflected in Cheng Yan's gradually fading pupils, deathly still and detached, numb and frenzied. A sudden, startled mechanical voice echoed in my mind, "Host, you've transmigrated into a dead man's literature. Stop what you're doing right now." It seemed to be trying to tell me something, but I had no time to pay it any mind. Footsteps sounded outside the kitchen. From the sound of it, there was more than one person. I calmly looked around and quickly stuffed Cheng Yen, who was barely clinging to life, into the large refrigerator. Before I closed the door, she wore an expression I had never seen before, reaching out with her last breath, her dim eyes filled with shock and pleading, "Tong Tong." Unfortunately, with a snap, the door closed. The progress bar for collecting regret points suddenly grew by a large margin. Task progress, 15%. The system froze, thinking there was a bug, and only reminded me not to act rashly again. I agreed. "Who allowed you to stand up?" A man's questioning voice sounded from behind. His tone carried a suppressed anger. It was the original owner's biological brother. "Su Feng, little sister, you're being disobedient again." Su Feng's attention was entirely on me, so he didn't notice the pool of blood on the ground. I turned around. The moment I saw his face, fragments of the plot flooded my mind once again. On the day Su Tong returned home, Su Feng had once stood in front of her, shielding the teary-eyed Su Anan behind him, and scolded, "I only have Anan as my sister, understand? Don't even think about replacing her." Su Tong had long been worn down into a weak and incapable character. Faced with her own brother's warning, she could only nod obediently, but yielding did not bring peace, it only brought Su Feng's escalating demands. Especially in the past year, he didn't even allow Su Tong to walk at home, forcing her to act like a dog in front of everyone. Cheng Yen also relied on him to stay in this family and continue to scold and beat Su Tong. I took a deep breath. The thrill of killing gradually faded, and a dull ache began to throb in my lower back. I could feel it. A kidney was missing there. I calmly covered the bloodstains on the ground. Su Feng slowly approached, one hand pressing down on my shoulder, the other holding a butterfly knife. "Speak up, little sister. Who gave you permission to stand up?" He always used to scare the original host like this. "Brother, is Tong Tong being disobedient again?" Su Anan playfully poked her head out, grinning as she said, "Today is my engagement party with brother Mingchen. Sister Tong Tong, you wouldn't be thinking of causing trouble, would you?" "Haha, just kidding. I believe Sister Tong Tong wouldn't do such a thing. Brother, please don't lock her up." There again, there she mentioned was the nightclub owned by Shen Mingchen, the original host's fiancé. 3 years ago, Su Anan framed Su Tong for hiring someone to defile her, which led to the original host being imprisoned. It was during that time that this kidney was lost. After being released from prison, she teamed up with her childhood friends to trick Su Tong into incurring a massive debt, playing with the original owner like a dog. Upon learning of this, Su Feng harshly blamed Su Tong for her stubbornness and threw her into Shen Mingchen's nightclub. That day, he chuckled softly and said, "Behave, and I'll take you home." The original owner had been tormented for half a year. Upon returning to the Su family, she would rather crawl on the ground than be locked up again. I know, she was truly terrified, but the more she feared, the more Su Anan used this to frighten her, without the slightest restraint. "Don't worry, Anan. Su Feng, reminded by Su Enan, suddenly remembered this detail and smirked wickedly. Brother knows what he's doing. I won't kill him. The smile on his lips deepened as he hoisted me over his shoulder. Su Enan's words were meant to stop me, but her eyes wandered over me as if watching a show. The hall was filled with many people. I was glad I had held back from taking action just now. They had all come early to prepare for tonight's engagement banquet. It suddenly occurred to me, the original host was driven mad tonight and fell to her death at Shenmingchen and Su Enan's engagement banquet. And after her death, all those who had bullied her suddenly remembered her goodness, repenting day and night, tormenting Su Enan with tears of remorse to atone for their sins. But by then, Su Tong had long since been reduced to ashes. I couldn't help but feel shocked. So in the original plot, the female lead had to rely on suicide to make them regret it. What a ridiculous logic. The system can finally explain it properly. This is the literature of the dead, all the suffering in the early stages is for the cathartic feeling of the whole world regretting it later. The key point of the literature of the dead is crying. I smacked my lips. What's all this talk about suffering or not suffering? Isn't it just about making others regret it? This, I'm very good at. Su Feng swaggered past the crowd. Su's parents gave me a cold glance before turning their eyes away. They were long accustomed to it. It was hardly surprising. After all, when I first returned home, they had warned me. Although Anan is not our biological child, 20 years of affection make her more than our own. Allowing you to come back is already our generosity. You'd better watch your step. So I held no expectations of them. I just quietly sighed to myself, thinking there really were quite a few people who needed to be dealt with. It was Shen Mingchen who unconsciously furrowed his brows and stood up. Where are you taking her? Su Feng snorted lightly. The usual place, of course. Shen Mingchen's expression shifted slightly, but he still spoke coldly. I'll see you out. He is the male lead of this book, although he never directly participated in bullying Su Tong, but it was he who personally arranged for the original owner to be sent to prison. The private room used to humiliate Su Tong was also provided by his own hand. Su Enan genuinely liked him, so did Su Tong. My gaze swept over him. Not lingering for long, whether direct or indirect, they all have to die. Su Enan bit her lip, giving her childhood friends a look. They understood immediately and were ready to follow. Let's have some fun. Su Feng quickly walked out the door and threw me into the car. Without a shred of mercy, the car started, and in no time, it came to a steady stop by the roadside. He led me familiarly through the corridor to the top-floor private room, and amid the clamor, he pushed me inside. Before I could steady myself, someone kicked me again. I lunged forward onto the glass coffee table, knocking over several wine bottles that shattered on the floor, shards of glass embedded in my palms, and blood gushed out. Hey, Su Tong. The woman walked toward me in high heels, lifted her foot, and stomped hard on my bloodied hand. The pain made me break out in a cold sweat. She crouched down, grabbed my face, and forced me to look her in the eyes. How did I teach you back then? Have you forgotten so quickly? I know this person. His name is Zhou Ning, a member of Su Enan's childhood circle, and one of the people who framed the original host. My sister has a poor memory. Why don't you teach her again? Su Feng licked his lips and signaled to Zhou Ning. Zhou Ning curled the corner of his mouth, opened the paint box beside him, and viciously jabbed the paintbrush into my face. The people around also gleefully poured wine over my head. They were exceptionally skilled at humiliating me. Shen Mingchen sat alone on the sofa, hidden in the flickering light, legs crossed, his face dark and gloomy, yet he remained silent throughout, showing not the slightest intention to intervene. He had always been this way, always, as if by not taking action, everything would remain unrelated to him. My hair was damp and clinging to my face. The paint mixed with alcohol seeped into my eyes, stinging so much that I squinted slightly. Bitch, don't move. Zhou Ning immediately slapped me across the face. Before long, she finally completed her masterpiece, a rather unsightly clown makeup. This suits you much better, she laughed with unrestrained glee. What does it matter if she's a real sister? If she can't compare to a fake one, it's all for nothing, don't you think, miss? I looked at her expressionlessly. What's real or fake? Those about to be buried are all considered dead. Su Feng sat upright on the sofa and suddenly tossed a handful of cash into the air. Sister, you still owe money, don't you? I don't speak. He looks at me mockingly, habitually playing with the butterfly knife in his hand. Crawl and pick it. Up, it's all yours. I gazed quietly. Su Feng also watched my reaction with great interest. After a long while, I lowered my gaze and took a deep breath. Enduring the pain in my palm, I silently knelt on the ground and bowed down. But because I was missing a kidney, my movements were unusually slow, and if I moved too much, a sharp pain would shoot through my lower back, so I could only move slowly, picking up the money on the ground bit by bit. Seeing this, the people in the private room burst into unrestrained laughter. Su Feng couldn't help but record a video and send it to Su Anan. Anan, I wish you a happy engagement. I didn't care at all. Calmly scanning the private room, there weren't many people. 4 men and 1 woman. Of the 2 sitting with Su Feng, one was lying face down on the sofa. I remember he couldn't hold his liquor well. Just a few cups and he couldn't take it anymore. Shen Mingchen, on the other hand, kept his distance from the crowd. I withdrew my gaze, my mind already made up. My palm was almost numb with pain, but I forced myself to endure it, crawling with great difficulty towards Su Feng. Su Feng was wearing leather shoes, his foot pressing down on the last banknote. Sister, he spoke up, aiming the camera at me, his smile malicious. Bark like a dog for me. I looked up, my expression calm. The people in the private room burst into laughter. Only Shen Mingchen's face changed. Be good, call me one. Su Feng raised an eyebrow and moved the phone even closer. After a moment of silence, I spoke calmly. Woof, woof, woof. The tone carried not a hint of emotion. Su Feng was taken aback for a moment, then let out a cold laugh, turning his gaze toward Shen Mingchen in the distance. President Shen, how would you describe it in one word? Under the dim light, Shen Mingchen's expression grew even more sinister. After a long while, he finally spoke with disgust. Lowly, I avoided his gaze, pretending not to have heard, and continued crawling toward Su Feng. A piercing pain shot through the palm of my hand. With each crawl, another streak of blood stained the floor. Fortunately, the darkness of the private room kept anyone from noticing. Seeing me move closer, Su Feng only pressed the banknote more firmly under his foot. I reached out and tugged twice, but couldn't pull it free, so I looked up at him. He clearly had no intention of letting me off. He raised an eyebrow and said with indifference, Sister, you picked it up well. Brother will reward you with a cup of wine, but I'm missing a kidney, so I can't drink. Just as I was about to refuse, he suddenly raised his wine glass and said, Open your mouth. Then, before I could react, he poured all the wine from the cup onto my face. The liquid slid into my nostrils, making me cough uncontrollably. Does it taste good? Su Feng raised his foot and stepped on my shoulder, trying to admire my embarrassed expression, but I didn't care at all. Leisurely picking up the last banknote, his expression changed instantly. You've dirted my shoes. Su Feng withdrew his foot and viciously pressed the blade against my neck. It seemed that in the next second, he would slit my throat. Just at that moment, Shen Mingchen shouted, Stop. He was somewhat annoyed. I didn't even glance, just stared fixedly at those shiny leather shoes. Su Feng's gaze paused. He had long heard Su Anan's complaints, something about Shen Mingchen seeming to have changed his heart, but in his eyes, the original owner wasn't even worth a single strand of Su Anan's hair. Thus, he was rather displeased. Shen Mingchen paused, regaining his composure. Su Tong, clean it up. Su Feng frowned, glaring at him with displeasure, yet, constrained by his background, he had no choice but to set down the knife and spat a mouthful of saliva at the leather shoes. Shen Mingchen turned his face away, refusing to look any longer. The phone rang abruptly. He glanced over it hastily and instructed, Have fun with it. With that, he walked out. It was Su Anan who couldn't wait to find him. I quickly called out, Shen Mingchen. He stiffened but didn't respond, walking straight out of the private room. Damn it, I grit my teeth. One got away. Su Feng sneered, Sister, don't delude yourself. You're not worthy. In this house, you only have the right to kneel. Understand? I gave a faint smile and spoke a sentence in an extremely soft voice. What did you say? Su Feng didn't hear clearly, so he leaned down and brought his ear close to me. I said, Sorry, I don't understand. Before the words had even finished, I suddenly stood up, pressed down the glass shard hidden in my palm, and stabbed it fiercely into his neck. Su Feng froze for a moment. The knife in his hand fell to the floor. He reflexively covered the wound, staggering backward in a daze, but it was already too late. I moved with lightning speed, using all my strength to sever his artery. Blood instantly gushed out, splattering across my face. The person beside him was dumbstruck. Just 1 second, I quickly picked up the knife and lunged forward, stabbing the man over a dozen times in a frenzy. In the room, only these two posed the greatest threat to me. That's why I decided to play along, approaching them step by step while pretending to be the prey. I looked down at my trembling right hand to hide the glass shard. I drove it deep into the palm of my hand. Now the bone was exposed, the flesh torn and mangled. The system let out another sharp, piercing shriek. Host, if the person dies, how are you going to collect regret points? No sooner had the words left my mouth than the regret value suddenly skyrocketed. Task progress, 30%. The system paused for a moment, then asked in confusion, wait, is that right? I tilted my head and scoffed lightly. What's wrong? Who said you have to kill the female lead to collect regret points? It's just a dead person's story. Who cares who dies? The system fell silent. I turned to look at Su Feng. His eyes were wide open, filled with shock, as he lay on the ground convulsing, like a live fish on a chopping board. Brother, you wouldn't dare to kill someone, would you? My tone was exceptionally calm. I dare. Su Feng's eyes deepened with fear. The mission progress rose accordingly. 33%, 34%, 35%. Aw, Zhou Ning screamed out loud. Help, help me. She turned around to run, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open the door, holding the knife. I slowly stood up and waved the VIP card in my hand at her. Shen Mingchen's private room could only be opened with a card, but now, the card is in my hand. Zhou Ning's face was deathly pale, frantic, scrambling and crawling to hide under the table. It was useless. I could kill her without lifting a finger. After slitting her throat, I dragged my broken body back to Su Feng. He clutched his neck, his face filled with terror, unable to utter a word. I turned to him, grabbing the drunk man's hair in one swift motion. Smiling, I said, brother, look. With those words, I raised the knife and plunged it fiercely into the drunk man's neck. The man jolted awake, his eyes wide and round, blood spurting out like a fountain, splashing onto Su Feng's face. Su Feng was so terrified that his pupils dilated again and again. The regret value soared to an unprecedented height. I grabbed his head and asked, dear brother, do you regret it? His lips trembled slightly, tears mingled with bloodstains as they fell, yet not a single sound could escape his throat. But I think he must have regretted it deeply, just like Cheng Yan in the refrigerator. A moment later, the task progress stopped at 50%. Unmoving, just like Su Feng's halted breath. See, who says making others regret has to be through taking one's own life? After killing them, I gasped for breath a few times, exhausted, and slumped down among the pile of corpses. The system cautiously asked, host, what should I call you? My surname is Qin, Sister Qin. What are you going to do next? I blinked and looked up at the ceiling. According to the plot, attend the engagement banquet. The system couldn't help but feel puzzled. You want to follow the plot? Of course, I smiled and said, word by word. After all, in a story about the dead, everyone should be dead. After a short rest, I dragged my half-numb body to wash up briefly, changed into a clean set of clothes, and hurried home. My parents were complaining about Cheng Yan. Whenever something happens, she's nowhere to be found. We shouldn't have been soft-hearted and let her stay in the first place. After all, she is Annen's biological mother. Would you really want to make our daughter sad? If she hears this later, she'll be upset again. Su's father fell silent. Su Annen descended the stairs arm in arm with Shen Mingchen. Dad, Mom, who were you saying is having a hard time? Is it Tong Tong? I know I took Mingchen away from you. If you're worried about her, I can give Mingchen back to Tong Tong. After all, I don't really belong here anyway. She bit her lip lightly, her eyes reddening, and unconsciously tightened her grip on Shen Mingchen's arm, not showing the slightest intention of actually giving him back to me. But my parents quickly reassured her, don't talk nonsense, you are our real daughter, be good. Annen, the engagement banquet is about to start. If you cry and ruin your makeup, you won't look pretty anymore. It was at that moment that I pushed the door open and walked in. My parents were both awkward and surprised to see me. Why are you back? Where's your brother? Su Annen couldn't help but furrow her brows. Logically speaking, Su Feng shouldn't have let me go home at this time. Could it be? Startled by her own bold thought, she shook her head vigorously. forcefully suppressing the ominous premonition in her heart. A glimmer flickered in Shin Mingchen's eyes as he instinctively took a step forward, only to be held back by Su Anan. He paused, halting his steps, his gaze settling on me. My brother. I let out a soft, dismissive hum. Where would I have a brother? Isn't that Su Anan's brother? What does it have to do with me? Father Su scolded in a low voice. Outrageous. What right do you have to criticize us? Don't forget what you've done. At the mention of this, Shin Mingchen's eyes instantly turned cold. In his heart, it was a fact that the original owner had tried to find someone to defile Su Anan. He could not accept that he would fall in love with such a malicious woman. Of course, too, could not accept that the original owner would fall in love with such a foolish man, so I had long since planned Shin Mingchen's death in my mind. Seeing that I remained silent, Mother Su sighed, looking at me coldly. Forget it, Su Tong, go pour me a glass of juice. With Cheng Yan not around, I was the servant, but she seemed to have forgotten I am her biological daughter. I'll have a cup too, thanks, Tong Tong. Su Anan affectionately hugged Shin Mingchen, looking smug. Remember to add ice. She emphasized the words, add ice, heavily. That was because once, when Su Tong simply forgot to add ice to her drink, she viciously stuffed a large amount of ice cubes into Su Tong's mouth, forcing her to hold them all night. Su Anan always bullied the original host like this, but no one knew, so she particularly enjoyed subtly showing off in public and then watching the original host's fearful expression up close. Such a low-level, twisted pleasure. I chuckled lightly and walked into the kitchen without a care. The first thing I did was pick up a knife. After hiding it away, I followed their instructions and poured 2 glasses of juice, and add ice. Keeping the request in mind, I opened the refrigerator. Cheng Yan's frozen, deathly pale corpse suddenly came into view. Her mouth was wide open. She must have been desperately calling for help. Unfortunately, the refrigerator was too well soundproofed. I expressionlessly pushed her hand aside, took a few ice cubes that were pressed under the corpse, and put them into the juice, gently stirred it well. Acting as if nothing was wrong, he handed it to the two of them. They were completely unsuspecting and took a few sips. I couldn't help but break into a smile, just like Su Anan. Uncomfortable under my gaze, she mustered the courage to provoke me. Tong Tong is so obedient, it seems my teachings haven't been in vain. Shin Mingchen suddenly remembered my pitiful appearance. His heart trembled slightly, finding it hard to listen any further, and he made an excuse. We should head to the hotel now. Su Anan gave him a coquettish kiss, her gaze sweeping past me in the corner of her eye. Seeing that I remained completely unfazed, she couldn't help but feel bored, pouted, and strode away. As soon as the two of them left, Su's mother received a phone call. It was the news of Su Feng's death. She heard the content clearly, her face gradually turning pale. Who died? The other person repeated it again, in a daze. She turned off her phone, trembling as she turned to look at me, fearfully saying, Su Tong, is your brother dead? Really? Is it true? It's true, of course, and not just him. Cheng Yan is in the fridge too. I said it very softly, light as their worthless lives. Father Su suddenly widened his eyes in disbelief and said, What did you say? Before the words had even finished, I drew the knife tucked at my waist and cleanly slit his throat. Blood splattered into Su Mu's eyes. She froze in place, her movements stiff as she touched her own face. Only when the warm liquid covered her fingers did she snap back to reality and let out a scream. My figure was reflected in her widened pupils. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground. Tong Tong, Tong Tong, what are you doing? We're your parents. They're not blood related. A faint smile played at the corner of my lips. Didn't you say that yourself? She was speechless, trembling like a leaf, and unconsciously stepped back. Regret surged once again. Mission progress. 55%. Am I right, stepdad? I held Mr. Su's head steady, staring into his gradually fading pupils. This time, I didn't strike to kill instantly, mainly because I was afraid he would die too quickly, without enough time for regret. Sure enough, upon hearing my voice, a flicker of focus returned to his gaze. The eyes were complex. The mission progress slowly increased amidst his violent gasps. Only when it reached 65% did I release him with satisfaction. I let his cooling corpse slide to the ground. Su's mother finally broke down in tears. Tong Tong, Mom was wrong. I was really wrong. Please, let me go. I beg you. Of course, I believe she has repented. but I have no intention of letting her go. If apologies were useful, what would we need the police for? I said it before, death literature should be all about the dead, no one can be an exception. After killing her, the value stopped at 70%. I calmly cleaned myself up, took a car to the engagement banquet, 2 more left, and I can go home. I'm not in a hurry at all, not at all. The engagement party was filled with guests. I stole a waiter's uniform, sneaked into the kitchen, and mixed drugs into the champagne. This medicine was originally prepared by Sue-Anan for me, 3 years ago. She had intended to have someone ruin me, but she never expected that those thugs would mistake their target. That's how the false accusation came about. After administering the drug, I returned to the scene. Shen Mingchen was busy entertaining the guests. Sue-Anan was also worried because she couldn't reach her parents or Su Feng, so they didn't notice me. I had finished everything and intended to hide in a corner, but I accidentally bumped into someone. Sorry, I whispered an apology and turned to leave, yet that person grabbed my hand, examining me closely. Have I seen you somewhere before? He thought for a moment, finally recognized me, and couldn't help but sneer loudly. Miss Su, oh my, how could you come to your sister's engagement party dressed like this, after being imprisoned? Su Tong had long become a laughingstock in their circle. Over the years, I've endured no shortage of cold mockery and sarcasm. In the original storyline, when Su Tong stood on the rooftop, these people still insisted she was faking it, laughing and urging her to jump, but when Su Tong actually jumped, they began shifting blame among themselves, ultimately pinning all the guilt on Sue-Anan, as if from beginning to end. Su Tong's death had nothing to do with me. Thinking of this, I clenched my teeth. What kind of young lady is she? She's clearly just a cleaning auntie. What kind of young lady wears such cheap clothes? You must have mistaken her for someone else. Is that so? Let me take another look. Well, if it isn't Su Tong, what's the matter? Couldn't handle being a young lady anymore, so you switched to being a waitress. Haha, haha. Miss Su sure has some interesting ideas. If you can't be a wealthy heiress, you might as well be a servant. At least you're still in the circle, right? A servant? You're giving her too much credit. I heard she was willing to crawl on the ground like a dog just to stay in the Su family, and the kind that barks, too. The people around burst into laughter. I raised my eyes, scanning them one by one. A surge of killing intent flickered in the depths of my gaze. Their attention was entirely fixed on me. Thus, no one noticed 3 additional locks had inexplicably appeared on the tightly shut door, all added by me. Today, no one will leave this room alive. I said so, hearing the commotion. Shen Mingchen's gaze shifted in this direction. When he saw me, his breath caught. He instinctively wanted to call out to me, but after catching sight of Su-Anan's aggrieved expression, he swallowed his words. He only hurriedly walked up to the stage, raising the wine glass. Thank you all for coming to Anan and my engagement banquet. I'll drink first to show my respect. Thunderous applause. The Shen group dominates the business scene in Haishur. People, to varying degrees, would give them face, so the people surrounding me gradually dispersed, each raising a wine glass to take a light sip. Showing their sincerity, Su-Anan lifted her head, smiling as she looked down at me. She raised her voice and emphasized, Sister, why aren't you drinking? With a single sentence, all attention was once again redirected back to me. Why I wouldn't drink, she knew perfectly well in her heart, but Su-Anan was determined to see me make a fool of myself. Shen Mingchen's mouth turned down at the corners as he shot her a displeased look. Mocking voices rose from the crowd once more. Exactly. Shouldn't a sister be happy for her younger sister's engagement? Could it be that she's still dreaming of a toad trying to eat swan meat? Mr. Shen must be quite the charmer, with both sisters pining for him. Wow, the rumor that Su Tong has had a crush on Mr. Shen for years is actually true. Come on, she should take a good look at herself and see if she's even worthy. You're a perfect match. Miss Su is perfect for being a dog. Ha 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 ha. The sound of mockery once drowned me out. It's so noisy it's driving me crazy. Seeing this, Su-Anan was smug, covering her mouth and snickering, but at that moment, Shen Mingchen suddenly shouted, Enough! The noise stopped instantly. Everyone turned their gaze toward Shen Mingchen. His face was dark and gloomy. He shook off Su-Anan's hand and walked toward me angrily, but unexpectedly. Just as he stepped down the stairs, Shen Mingchen stumbled. For some reason, his figure suddenly swayed violently. Before he could even reach me, he collapsed to The ground, I couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. To be honest, that medicine really worked fast. Mingchen, brother, Suanan cried out, lifted her skirt, and quickly ran over to help him up. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with him? Shouldn't you be the most familiar with that? I scoffed lightly. Suanan looked up in confusion, yet, one by one, the people before me fell to the ground. Only I remained standing in the center. Unwavering and unmoved, she couldn't help but gasp sharply, You drugged them. I gave an affirmative look. I lifted my coat and pulled out a knife from my waistband. This one I had sharpened on purpose. A cold glint flashed from the tip of the blade. She immediately panicked and demanded, Su Tong, what are you going to do? I'm warning you, don't you dare do anything reckless, otherwise my parents and brother won't let you off. Oh really? I smiled. Did you get in touch with them? Her heart skipped a beat, and she swallowed hard. What did you do to them? Tell me. I took out a handkerchief and elegantly wiped the blade. Don't worry, you'll see them soon. With that, I crouched down, grabbed the fallen guests, and dealt with them one by one with a knife. My movements exceptionally swift, though they had lost their strength. They were not unconscious and still retained their senses. Seeing the situation take a sudden turn for the worse, someone tremblingly took out their phone, intending to call the police, but I found there was no signal at all. I pointed to the signal jammer by the wall and made a gesture for silence. Always so thorough. Seeing that calling the police was not an option, someone desperately propped themselves up and began crawling toward the door. But as soon as I looked up, I noticed that 3 extra locks had somehow appeared on the door handle. The people who realized what was happening stared at me in horror, only to see me wave the keys in my hand as if showing off. Then, right in front of them, without hesitation, I threw the key out the window. For a moment, cries of anguish filled the air. The regret value began to rise again. I cut my way through, my technique growing more and more proficient. Suanan was completely dumbfounded. Her beautiful eyes widened abruptly, unable to suppress the scream in her throat. Mingchen, brother Mingchen, save me quickly. Su Tong has gone mad. Shen Mingchen's lips turned deathly pale. Lying on the ground, he struggled to sit up. Su Tong, he called softly, his voice cold and sharp. Having just finished harvesting the heads, I was wiping the sweat from my forehead. Hearing the noise, I walked over and looked down at him. He looked up at me, his gaze filled with pain and struggle. After a long while, he finally regained some strength, composed himself, and said softly, Su Tong, I know you love me, but you shouldn't have tried to humiliate Anan. Here's the deal. As long as you apologize to her, I can forgive you. His tone was as condescending as ever, as if he were the one holding the knife. I frowned, looking at him as if he were a fool. You forgive me, that's right. He nodded in confirmation. As long as you apologize, the wedding will proceed as scheduled. However, my marriage partner will be you. Suanan also chimed in. Yes, sister, dear sister, I'll give brother Mingchen to you. Please don't kill me. I let out a chuckle. Who cares whether Shen Mingchen holds a wedding or not? All I care about is whether he'll have a funeral. Seeing me laugh, Shen Mingchen mistook it for a sign of interest and continued to persuade me. Su Tong, I will handle all of this. Let's pretend the past never happened. I was taken aback for a moment. Never happened. That's especially funny. When Suanan was almost assaulted, why didn't he tell Su Tong's whole family to act like it never happened? I took Shen Mingchen's hand and placed it on my empty lower back, asking, Shen Mingchen, can your flippant, it never happened, make my kidney grow back? He froze completely. In the plot, he didn't know that Su Tong had lost a kidney. But when it comes to something like kidney removal, would his subordinates really dare to act against the original host without going through him? And Shen Mingchen, did he truly not know? Suanan lowered her head guiltily and shifted backward. Shen Mingchen quickly composed himself, feigning calm as he said, this is no big deal. I'll find a way to give you another kidney. Really? Really? Tong, give me some time. Trust me, okay? The corners of my mouth lifted, my eyes sparkling. No need, you can give it to me now. Before he could grasp the meaning behind my words, I reversed my grip on the knife and plunged it deep into his lower back. He cried out in pain. Suddenly understanding my intention, he visibly panicked and said, Tong, I know you're acting out of love for me. You're just too emotional. You need to calm down. Mid-sentence, I drove the knife into his mouth. Shut up. Listening to idiots talk is truly annoying. Shin Mingchen clutched his mouth in agony. Blood and fragments of his tongue oozing from between his fingers. Su Enan was scared out of her wits, not even caring about Shin Mingchen anymore, and frantically fled into the lounge. Shin Mingchen sobbed as he crawled forward, mumbling something incoherently. The mission progress rapidly increased. 80%, 81%, 82%. I stepped on Shin Mingchen amid his violent struggles. I unceremoniously cut open his skin and dug out what I wanted with my bare hands. After much effort, I finally dug it out. It was truly not easy. I lowered my head to look at Shin Mingchen. He lay collapsed on the ground, blood and sweat mingled together. Long since breathless. Trash, I thought. When the original owner was treated like this, no one gave her anesthesia either. The regret value stopped at 95%. I turned to look at the lounge. There was still one inside. Sister, I called out softly, dragging my numb leg as I limped to the lounge door and knocked politely. Thump, thump, thump. Ah, don't kill me, don't kill me. Please, don't kill me. Su Enan's terrified screams came from inside the door. Actually, I knew she hadn't locked it, because I had already broken the lock long ago, but I still knocked on the door patiently, listening with great interest to the shouts, please for help, and the faint thuds of heads hitting the floor from inside. The regret value on my head also fluctuated repeatedly with each knock on the door. In just a moment, Su Enan's heart-wrenching sobs echoed through the room, utterly broken and despairing. Only when the task progress bar reached 100% did I gently push the door open, treating her just as I had treated Shin Mingchen. They owe Su Tong. I want them to pay back double. Set the fire. With the help of the gasoline I had prepared, the flames quickly spread, a perfectly good engagement banquet. I single-handedly turned it into a funeral pyre. I straddled the windowsill, gazing at the stars in the night sky, squeezing out a few dry tears. The system was puzzled. Sister Chin, what are you doing? I answered with a straight face. Didn't you say the essence of death literature is crying? They can't cry anymore. But then again, who cares who's crying? It let out a few awkward chuckles. You really are the most efficient host I've ever seen, I asked. In that case, can I have a reward? What would you like? It asked. I whispered a wish in a very soft voice. Finally, I leaped down from the windowsill. Upon returning home, I eagerly looked up that novel. The ending of the book has already been altered. At the conclusion of the story, Su Tong wakes up in an unfamiliar body. A new memory suddenly appears in her mind, vague yet real. Somehow, a phrase inexplicably echoed in her ears. Please live well with a healthy body. She looked at her clean and tidy self in the mirror. Suddenly, tears welled up in my eyes. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After crossing over, I was bound to the female protagonist system. The system gave me 3 identity choices. The first identity, the woman of a domineering CEO. The domineering CEO married me for special reasons, but he doesn't love me. I can sleep in every day, have endless money to spend, don't need to serve my in-laws, and travel the world. Second identity, a Yandra woman. The Yandra is controlling, but he's coldly handsome and wealthy, giving me everything he has. Give me endless money, but don't allow me to go to work or leave the house, and don't let me have any friends of the opposite sex. The third identity, the woman of a poor man. Though poor, he is handsome, and even with only 3 yuan in his pocket, he buys me a big steamed bun to eat. A simple and ordinary life, a partner who works from dawn till dusk, gentle and considerate, with looks that are pleasing to the eye. He is very good to me, but the only shortcoming is poverty. After reading the options the system gave me, I didn't hesitate to choose to be the woman of a domineering CEO. What a joke. He just has a lot of money and little to do. Love, it's worthless. Even if it were given to me, I wouldn't want it. 3 months since I crossed over to this place, I've never met the domineering CEO, and the system has vanished without a trace. Living alone in this enormous villa, surrounded by a crowd of servants attending to my every need, a top-tier chef prepares nutritious meals from different cuisines for me every day, and the home gym and entertainment facilities allow me to stay indoors without ever needing to go out. In my leisure time, I summon the heads of luxury brands to bring their latest collections for me to choose from. When boredom strikes, I fly to various destinations around the world, unconcerned about money flowing away like water, because, after all, it's not my money being spent, Just as I was marveling at how I had finally chosen the right identity, the domineering CEO returned. The domineering CEO is named Shiyu, pretty much as I imagined, unsmiling, stern-faced, but with sharp, well-defined features and an outstanding presence. He truly has a handsome appearance. I glanced at him and then averted my gaze. After all, I'm good-looking enough to be a star myself. When it comes to looks, who doesn't have them? Chiyu sat on the sofa and beckoned me over, saying, "Wan Lon Lon, come here." I paused for a moment, pointed at myself, and silently questioned him with my expression. Chiyu frowned slightly. "Don't make me repeat myself." Hesitantly, I shuffled my feet and slowly moved over. Standing stiffly in front of him, he grabbed me abruptly, and before I could react, I found myself sitting in his lap. Chiyu held my delicate face with one hand and kissed me. I was completely stunned. Didn't they say the domineering CEO didn't love me? Then what is this all about? I didn't push him away, half resisting and half yielding, enjoying it while making sounds. Chiyu, however, said, "Woman, is kissing me so boring that you can't even stay focused? After all, he is my sugar daddy. How dare I offend him?" So, I started to argue back. "Don't you not love me?" Chiyu's face darkened. "What are you deluding yourself about? That I could give you love? Get rid of that filthy thought of yours." Then, he forcefully pushed me away and strode out of the villa. Watching him walk away, I cursed loudly. "You lunatic, if it weren't for your money, I'd definitely punch you. You big idiot." After some thought, I couldn't help but angrily mutter, "Narcissist, and your kissing skills are absolutely terrible." Once in the car, Chiyu couldn't resist checking the surveillance footage, only to see me cursing him. His face darkened completely, but I was completely unaware, silently praying that he wouldn't come back. Soon, Chiyu brought back a pregnant woman. Pregnant woman is just an unpleasant term, expressing my displeasure. In reality, AI is very beautiful, appearing gentle and fragile, with no hint of aggression. If that were truly the case, I wouldn't be so displeased, but she's a total pro at this game. I don't care if she steals people, I'm afraid she'll steal my money, Chiyu said in a tone that sounded like he was informing me. AI is pregnant, so you should give in to her more and even give up the master bedroom. My first reaction was, "Is this your child?" Chiyu's face flushed red. I spoke with a hint of shame. "No, you and I are just good friends." "Oh, I understand." Chiyu liked her, but she liked and married another man. Now that Amy has argued with her own man, she remembered Chiyu as a backup. In an instant, I thought of many possibilities. But what does this have to do with me? Why should I be the one to host your gossip? Today it's giving up the master bedroom, tomorrow it's giving up clothes and jewelry, and the day after that, won't it be giving up money? I thought for a moment. Chi Lu, I don't think this is right. The master bedroom has traces of our affection, and Ai's husband will definitely mind. My words undoubtedly struck a nerve with both of them. One turned pale with anger, the other flushed with embarrassment. Finally, I took the liberty of deciding, the largest and most beautiful guest room should be left for Amy. In fact, every guest room is the same size and has the same layout. Chi Lu rarely came back to this villa, so he didn't know. Hearing my words, he seemed to think I was some kind of extraordinary, perfect wife. Amy lowered her head, lost in thought, as if planning something. Anyway, she just settled in like that. Ever since Amy moved in, Chiyu started coming to the villa every day. My peaceful life was just disrupted by them. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping soundly. A faint, whimpering cry woke me up. I pushed open the door, and there was Chi Lu openly holding AI, comforting her. AI said tearfully, "Lu, he came to beg me to go home. He said he would never look for other women again. That last time was just an accident. What should I do, Chi?" You looked at her with heartache. AI, what is so good about him? Is he really the only one for you? I can take care of you too, and the child in your belly. Her tears fell even more heavily. You don't understand. I know I've let down your love, but I truly love him. She looked up and saw me. "So," she then asked, "even if I'm willing to be with you, you're already married now, with Wan Lon Lon?" Her gaze held a subtle challenge as she looked at me. Chi Lu straightforwardly gave her reassurance. "I'll divorce her, give her 10 million, and send her abroad." Damn, 10 million, this man is truly heartless. If I hadn't been spending money like water over the past 3 months, 10 million would indeed be a huge sum for me, but only after spending it did I realize that 10 million is actually not much at all. Chiyu's wicked heart, this stingy man. I'm truly at a loss for words. No, no. I need to plan ahead. I hid back in my room and didn't hear Chiyu's words. 1 million a day, when Ai's husband, Shen Ziji, appeared at my villa. My widened eyes couldn't even begin to express my shock. Isn't this guy the second identity choice the system gave me? The Yandera male, Shen Zijian, standing in front of me was Annie, and when she saw Shen Zijian coming to find her, her eyes lit up with joy. Shen Zijian's eyes were fixed in this direction, and to outsiders, it seemed as if he was looking at Ai and I, but I know, this Yandera man is looking at me. His gaze is full of possessiveness, as if he wants to claim me as his own. Shen Zijian curled his lips into a smile. I love you, so much that I'm willing to do anything for you, including permanently eliminating anyone who stands in your way. Ai and I was moved to tears and rushed over excitedly to hug him. He remained unmoved, not returning the embrace. I took half a step back in fright, because I knew Shen Zijian's words were directed at me. I felt a bit of lingering fear. The system had sent me to this world, and I knew nothing. Unaware of what story lay ahead, Annie gazed deeply at Shen Ziji. Ah Ji, I knew it. You love me. I'll go back with you, and I'll never be willful again. Shen Ziji, with an inscrutable expression, pushed Annie away. No, you did well this time. You let me see her. Shen Ziji's her is me, but Annie automatically assumed it was Qi Lu. She spoke with a hint of nervousness, but Shen Zijian misunderstood. Ah Heng, don't overthink it. Ah, you and I are just friends. He's already married. Qi Yu's expression remained dark from start to finish. You promised me you would get a divorce. You said you wanted to come back to me. What are you doing now? Ai and I couldn't bear to let go of Qi Yu's tenderness, nor could she bring herself to give up on Shen Zijian. She bit her lip. You, please respect me, don't slander me. In this lifetime, I have only ever loved one man. Heng, Qi Yu's face was deathly pale. He was no longer sure if his obsession with Ai and I stemmed from unwillingness to accept defeat. Shen Zijian used the excuse that Ai and I was pregnant to stay overnight. That night, I slept restlessly, constantly feeling as though something was about to happen. Sure enough, the unexpected really did happen. Qi Yu never sleeps with me in the master bedroom. The master bedroom is always mine to enjoy alone. I turned over, only to touch a scorching heat source. I exclaimed, "Who is it, Qi Yu?" He spoke with dissatisfaction. "It seems Qi Yu often comes to sleep with you." It was Shen Zijian's voice. I quickly pulled the blanket over my body. Just kidding, I'm dressed quite lightly. Okay. Shen Zijian also pulled the blanket aside and pressed down on me. Answer me, Lon Lon. His breath was right there, and I could smell the scent on him, which made me a bit entranced. In a daze, I blurted out, "No, I slept alone." He gave a satisfied light bite on my earlobe. "Good blue. Have you had enough fun? If you've had enough, it's time to come back to me." A foreign object pressed against me. I felt a bit flustered, not understanding his meaning, and pushed hard against his body. He grabbed both my hands with one hand and pinned them against the headboard. "Lon Lon, I've had enough of the days without you by my side. I'm sorry, but this time, I'm going to keep you by my side forever. No matter how much you threaten me, I will never let you leave again." I trembled with anger and shouted, "Shen Ziheng, you bastard, let go of me right now." He whispered with a maddening laugh. "Bastard, isn't that what you like the most? Don't you love it when I'm a bastard to you in bed?" These shameful words made my face flush even redder. Fortunately, it was nighttime. Fortunately, the lights were off. Later, I couldn't resist the drowsiness and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, Shen Zijian was not by the bed. If the quilt didn't still carry his scent, I might have thought it was all a dream. He had taken Annie away, leaving Qi Yu alone, unwilling to accept it. As for me, I worry day in and day out, cooped up in the villa all day. Feeling anxious, I chose a clear and sunny day to step outside, but then I ran into Shen Zijian. The look in his eyes was unmistakably that of someone lying in wait, utterly triumphant at having caught me. I turned around and wanted to leave, but he walked toward the traffic, which was dense and moving faster and faster. A car was driving in his direction, yet he stood still, neither dodging nor avoiding it, terrified. I rushed over without a second thought and dragged him back. He took the opportunity to embrace me, laughing easily. "See, even if it happened again, you would still risk danger and injury to save me without a second thought. He was someone who had never been loved, never been firmly chosen. In that moment, how deeply his heart was moved. No one could know, only Shen Zizhen himself knew. He clearly knew. He was utterly captivated, completely in love with her. I shouted angrily, "Idiot! You big idiot! Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Shen Zizhen, however, said, "Yes, I don't want my life. I want you. I want everything about you. Your person, your heart, all of you. I want you to belong only to me, to be mine alone." He pleaded like a pitiful little puppy. "Lan Lan, please don't leave me again. Don't abandon me. Come back to me, okay? I really love you so much. I love you to the point of madness. Just thinking about that guy Chi Yu being able to have you makes me want to destroy him." I took half a step back in fright, which only seemed to provoke him. Further, he grabbed me frantically. "Don't be so cold to me. It scares me. Anyone else can treat me this way. But not you, Lan Lan. You can't do this to me. Don't force me to use despicable means to keep you by my side." He kissed me wildly, leaving me breathless and weak in the legs. My body half collapsed against him. He bore my weight, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "Lan Lan, I love you madly." When I woke again, I was at Shen Zizhen's home. Everything here is arranged in the style I love, vintage and grand. Shen Zizhen watched as I slowly woke up, kissed my forehead, and said, "Lan Lan, welcome back to our home. Everything here is exactly as it was when you left." I was puzzled by all of this, only to find myself shackled to the bed. Shen Zizhen then said, "Lan Lan, it won't hurt if you don't struggle." Indeed, the shackles were wrapped in a layer of silk, making them incredibly soft. "Shen Zizhi, have you lost your mind? This is illegal." Shen Zizhi rubbed his face against mine. "Yes, I've lost my mind. Every day without you, I feel like I'm going insane." Looking at the obsessive man before me, I couldn't help but sigh and advise, "I won't leave. Now, please unlock these shackles for me." He hesitated, not quite believing me. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm just a weak woman. Are you afraid I'll run away? Besides, this is uncomfortable for me." Hearing that, he no longer hesitated and unlocked the shackles for me. I flexed my wrists and suggested, "How about you? Show me around the house. I mainly want to scout the place, so it's easier to escape when he's not around." Shen Zizhen nodded, not refusing me. "As long as it's not my decision to leave him, he won't refuse me." If I wanted the stars in the sky, perhaps he would pluck them for me. I never expected to see Annie again in a small storage room. It was like one of those damp, sunless rooms in the urban villages of big cities. A tiny space, yet fully equipped, and this was where Annie lived, without sunlight. Her skin was a bloodless, deathly pale. It threw the child aside, ignoring the crying infant. If not for that crying, I wouldn't have come to this warehouse, nor would I have met Annie. Shen Zizhen, worried that I might misunderstand and be upset, explained, "Lan Lan, don't get the wrong idea. I never actually registered a marriage with Annie. What we got was a fake certificate. The child isn't mine either. I found someone else to consummate the marriage with her, and that's how the child came to be." He continued on his own. "I never let her set foot in our house either. She's always lived here, from the very beginning. It's been this way. I'm not lying to you. You can ask her yourself." Annie was already acting a bit off. "Ah Hang, you finally came to see me. You have to believe me. I have no idea how that child came about. Someone must have framed me." No, he's not my child." Shen Ziheng looked at her with disgust. "You are no longer necessary. What does this mean? Is Shen Zizhe going to kill her?" I quickly stopped him. Why don't you just let her go?" He raised an eyebrow. "Let her go where?" I pursed my lips in thought. "Qi Lu." Shen Zizheng seemed satisfied with the answer, stroking my hair over and over. "Good girl." I, however, looked at me with hatred in her eyes. "Wan Lan Lan, it's you. You're the one standing between me and Ah Hang. I won't let you off." Shen Zizheng angrily kicked her, and she fell to the ground in a sorry state, looking at him with hurt in her eyes. I envy Annie for returning to Qi Lu, who is generous with his money and not sickly, but Annie has come to hate me. She didn't want to return to Qi Lu's side, even if it meant living in a small, sunless warehouse. She would rather stay by Shen Zizhen's side. Perhaps it's a case of not cherishing what you have once you've obtained it. Annie's return did not bring Qi Lu much joy. With a heart full of guilt, He carefully took care of Amy and her child. Amy deeply despised the child, believing it was because of this child that Shen Zizheng no longer liked her. She strangled the child to death. Witnessing this scene, Qi Li deeply doubted whether the person before him was still the little girl who wouldn't even dare to step on an ant. Amy laughed happily and wildly. Ayu, this child is dead. Can you help me tell Ahang to come pick me up? Okay. Chiyu knew that Amy's mind was in trouble. He sought out the world's top psychiatrists and psychologists to counsel and treat her. I kept muttering all day long. Chiyu, you have to believe me. Ahang does have feelings for me. He's just been bewitched by that woman outside. As long as that child dies, he will forgive me. I don't know either. I don't understand why that child isn't Ahang's. It must have been swapped. Someone is trying to harm me. That person is Ruan Lanlan. I want her to taste the bitterness of being abandoned too. Chiyu, if you divorce Ruan Lanlan, I will marry you. Chiyu lowered his gaze, offering no response. But in his heart, he already had an answer. Chiyu found me, holding the divorce agreement. He hesitated for a long time without speaking. Impatiently, I snatched the document and saw the terms that made my eyes light up. He had directly given me half of his entire fortune, 50-50. I was a bit suspicious. Do you feel sorry for me? Qi Lu nodded. I know you were imprisoned here by Shen Zizhen, but I used you for AI and because only when you are by Shen Zizhen's side will AI and I return to me. This is nothing more than an equivalent exchange between him and me. I remained silent for a long time, running countless plans through my mind, and finally made an outrageous demand, taking away 60% of his wealth. This was the limit of what he could concede. In truth, he had no reason to feel guilty toward me. It was precisely this guilt of his that gave me the leverage to take advantage of him. Everyone is selfish, and I am no exception. In the end, everyone was satisfied with this transaction. I signed the divorce agreement and congratulated Qi Yu, congratulations, you can finally marry the one you love. He looked at me in a daze, his heart heavy with discomfort. He couldn't help but wonder if he had made the wrong choice. He immediately denied it again. Impossible. From beginning to end he had only ever loved Amy. He couldn't possibly fall in love with someone else. Chiyu's gaze grew resolute as he thanked me. Thank you, but I won't be inviting you to the wedding banquet. After Chiyu left, Shen Zizhen smiled from the bottom of his heart. He never expected that I would agree to the divorce so quickly. Actually, it's because the money was enough. Even if Chiyu got divorced, I wouldn't want to marry him, because she was still waiting for Shen Zizhen to change his mind. Ai's unwillingness to marry him actually made Chiyu breathe a sigh of relief. He watched I, who was sometimes normal and sometimes insane, feeling utterly exhausted. Over time, he became unwilling to return to the villa. In the villa, traces of me were gradually erased by I. Chiyu watched as the items I had arranged were thrown out one by one, and quietly had someone collect them. Amy felt the chill of Chilio's silent treatment. She couldn't believe that the man who had always professed his love for her, the man she had been waiting for, had now abandoned her too. She rushed to Chilio's company, causing a scene like a madwoman. The incident was sensationalized by the media, causing Chilio's company's stock price to plummet dramatically. You, how could you treat me like this? You said you loved me the most. Have you also been bewitched by that despicable woman, Wan Lanlan? Chiyu, why are you avoiding me? Why won't you come back to me? Chiyu, I've thought it through. Let's get married. Once we're married, you'll change your mind. Then I'll give you a son to inherit everything you have. Chiyu sent someone to tie I up and bring her back to the villa. Amy had now calmed down. I'm sorry. I lost control. I'm sorry. I should just leave. I don't want to hurt you anymore. Chiyu's heart softened again. Holding Amy, he couldn't help but feel restless. During the spring festival, Chiyu went on a business trip. Perhaps he was genuinely busy, or perhaps he was just finding an excuse to avoid Amy. In short, he gave Amy a chance. Amy came to Shen Ziji's place. She squatted at the door for a long time, finally waiting for Shen Ziji, who was about to leave, and me, who was seeing him off. I watched her attire and every move, completely imitating me. Shen Ziji's anger simmered beneath the surface. He couldn't stand anyone imitating my mannerisms, my everything. Amy, mimicking my usual tone of voice, spoke to Shen Ziji with ease. Ah Hang, long time no see. Have you missed me? Ah Hang, Happy New Year. Ah Hang, could you hold me? I'm so cold. Shen Zizheng said heartlessly. Don't put on a show in front of me with that face of yours. Yet these words gave Amy an idea. She immediately went to get plastic surgery. Now she looks about 70% like me, but her face is stiff when she moves. After that, she underwent several more surgeries until her face looked natural, bearing a 90% resemblance to me. She returned to the country with her new face. You didn't recognize her, because she looked so much like me, and it had been too long since he last saw me. Amy was already adept at imitating everything about me. Chiyu, why haven't you been looking for me lately? Chiyu mistook Amy for me. Lan, I regret divorcing you a bit. If I said I was willing to start over with you, would you give me a chance? Amy's face darkened, but she quickly composed herself. Why, aren't you the one who loves Amy the most? After a moment of silence, Chiyu said, my feelings for her were just an obsession, not love. I'm sorry to you. If you're willing to give me another chance, I will definitely make you happy. Ai's eyes turned fierce. Chiyu, you don't deserve happiness, you only deserve to go to hell. He was the final straw that broke her. Chiyu's words drove Ai into a frenzy. She thought she would take my place. Amy had unwittingly broken into the villa, drugged me, and tied me up. My mouth was stuffed with cotton and sealed with tape. My body was curled up like a caterpillar, and I had no strength left because of the drugs. The space around me was filled with clothes. I immediately realized this was my wardrobe. Before I could continue speculating, Shen Zizhen returned. Amy stepped forward and warmly embraced him, saying, Shen Zizhen, with my tone and behavior, mixed with her own affection. This left Shen Zizhi bewildered for a moment. He was somewhat suspicious but did not show it. Shen Zizhi tested many details, and I matched them all one by one. I couldn't help but admire how well she had done her homework. Yet, it is precisely this meticulous and flawless memory that makes Shen Zizheng even more certain. Amy is not me. The madness in Shen Zizheng's eyes is almost overflowing, but Amy remains completely unaware. She only feels that she has finally reclaimed her ahang, her face flushed with a rosy hue. Shen Zizhen, shall we have a child? He pushed her away in resistance and turned to leave. After some investigation, he learned the whole truth. By then, I was already half-starved to death. I had no chance to send me away, because Shen Zizhen had already sent people to keep her under strict surveillance that very day. Shen Zizhen gripped Ai's neck. Speak, where is she? Where is the real one? Lan, I was terrified. She couldn't understand how she had been recognized when everything had seemed foolproof. I tried to defend herself. Ahang, I am Wan Lan, you're Wan Lan. Shen Zizhi sneered mockingly. My Lan, I would never mistake her. A counterfeit can only be a counterfeit. Don't think that just because you wear Lan's face, you can become her. Upon hearing this, I roared angrily. Why does Wan Lan have so much? She stole your love, and then she stole Chiyu's love. In the beginning, both of you belonged to me, but in the end, she took everything. Shen Zizhi threw her to the ground. Don't compare me to Chiyu, he's not worthy. From the very beginning, I had no interest in you. Pretending to marry you was only to fulfill Lan's wish of marrying Chiyu, but at that time, Chiyu couldn't see his own heart clearly. He thought he loved you, so for Lan, I married you, so that Lan could fulfill her wish, but I regret it. I am not that generous. I cannot bear to see Lan being with someone else. I must win her back. I must have her every moment. She can only belong to me alone. From beginning to end, you were just a tool. Not only did you fail to win my love, but even Qi Lu has come to recognize his own heart. You are too filthy, too malicious. I wailed hysterically. How am I filthy and malicious? There is no one in the world kinder than me. I wouldn't even harm an ant. Filthy and malicious. It's you, it's all of you. Shen Zizheng stepped on Amy's hand. Where is she? I'll ask one last time. If you don't tell me, I'll kill you. Amy did not want to die. She cherished her life dearly. I was rescued by Shen Zizhi, and the family doctor was already prepared. At this moment, I completely let myself faint. No need to worry about whether I would kill me with a single slash. Shen Zizhi arranged for a plastic surgeon to give I a new face. This time, she gave Amy the face of Qi Lu. After all, there are differences between male and female bone structures, so it ended up being about 80% similar. Shen Zizheng wanted to discuss Qi Lu. In his view, the two had already made a deal. yet the other party broke the rules, trying to reclaim the traded item. This is against the rules. Did Chi-Yu not recognize AI? He didn't believe it. This guy must be putting on an act, going with the flow, otherwise. How could Annie have the ability to enter the villa? It was all because Chi Lu was causing trouble. Behind the scenes, when Annie returned to Chi Lu's side wearing his face, he knew he had failed. He looked at Annie with disgust. Why are you so useless? I gave you the chance, and you still couldn't seize it, Annie taunted. Wan Lanlan can live just fine with or without you. Actually, she's even better off with Shen Ziji. It seems you really can't compare to Shen Ziji. When Chi Lu loved her, he would take thoughtful care of her, and after confirming that he no longer loved her, he revealed his ruthless nature once more. He slapped Annie hard across the face. If it weren't for you, this wretched woman, Lanlan wouldn't have divorced me. Annie laughed loudly. Wasn't it you who personally took the divorce papers to Wan Lanlan to get the divorce? Moreover, you only got divorced to marry a lowly woman like me. In the end, I still didn't want to marry you, because, in my heart, you are no match for Shen Zizhen. In every way, you fall short. Ai's words made Chi Lu even more irritable. He was like someone with a tendency toward domestic violence, punching and kicking her. I showed no tolerance or compromise whatsoever. In her view, Chi Lu would not kill her. Life is greater than dignity, and dignity is greater than everything else. Since life was not threatened, she had to uphold her dignity. In this love, she had lost, not to Wan Lanlan, but because she had loved the wrong two people. Ai closed her eyes, savoring the physical pain to ease the torment in her heart. For her, Chi Yu's domestic violence had become the very motivation for her to persist. Chi Yu, too, showed no restraint in venting all his frustrations on Ai. Ai became pregnant multiple times, only to suffer repeated miscarriages. In the end, she was left infertile. Instead, she was grateful because she didn't want her child to suffer. After Chi Yu abused Ai for the nth time, he unexpectedly died himself. The cause of death was poisoning, and resuscitation efforts were ineffective. Ai had suffered multiple injuries from domestic violence and miscarriages, and she took the opportunity to collect drugs that were otherwise inaccessible. A certain dose was stolen and then all of it was fed to Chi Yu. Chi Yu died, and Ai cried freely and easily. You, I trusted you so much, although I don't love you. I truly considered you my only one, yet you betrayed me, betrayed the feelings between us. It doesn't matter anymore. You're dead, and everything is over. From now on, I will only remember the good in you. I forgive you for all the bad things you did to me. You, if there is a next life, I still want to meet you, and then send you off one more time. I was not sent to prison because she was mentally ill and therefore not guilty, but she was locked up in a mental hospital. I know nothing about Chi Yu and Ai. Shen Zizhen would never tell me. He only keeps me imprisoned here even when watching TV. He restricts me from paying too much attention to any male characters, including those in anime. Even when I developed a great interest in something or a certain field, he would still stop me. Lan, you've been reading for 10 minutes. In these 10 minutes, you haven't spoken to me at all. I frowned, but he immediately smoothed it out for me. Don't frown, it makes me uncomfortable. I was left speechless. Shen Zizhen continued. Why aren't you replying to me? Lan, don't ignore me. It hurts. Can you love me a little more, just a bit more each day? I nodded numbly. He joyfully embraced me. Lan, I don't ask for your love to match mine, only that you love me a little more each day. I don't ask for you to be me every moment, only that your eyes see no one but me. Don't chase after meaningless freedom. Could you focus more on me instead? I nodded woodenly once again. He kissed me again, overjoyed. This wasn't the first time. It happened several times a day. Originally, Shen Zizhen still had to go out to the office to handle documents. Since the incident where Ai kidnapped me, he now works from the villa. Those managers and chairmen come to the villa to meet with Shen Zizhen for meetings from time to time. During the meeting, Shen Zizhen didn't forget to have me sit beside him and listen in. In short, he even had someone posted outside the restroom door to wait for me. It was so terrifying that I started planning how to escape. There was only one chance. If I got caught midway, it would be shackles from then on. I never expected that this opportunity would be brought by Annie. Shen Zizhi was the first to know about Annie's escape from the hospital. He was afraid that Annie would come here to harm me, so He could only watch over me nervously and cautiously, but unexpectedly, AI and I still found an opportunity. Shen Zizheng thought that it was too unsafe to stay in the country and planned to move abroad. Everything was going smoothly. However, AI and I hired foreign assassins to enter the country and assassinate Shen Zizheng. Annie was not short of money. She had taken all of Qiyu's assets before his death. It was precisely because of this money that she now had the means to assassinate Shen Zizhi. Shen Zizhi had not anticipated that Annie would spend a fortune to hire an assassin. His bodyguards were no match, and the mercenaries had not yet arrived. He shielded me as we retreated step by step, keeping me from harm, yet he himself was shot in the arm and the left side of his abdomen, bleeding profusely. I watched in fear and trepidation. In truth, if he hadn't been protecting me, he could have easily dodged both bullets. I was overwhelmed with guilt, because I still think of running away, escaping from his suffocating love. He is good, it's just that I don't like this suffocating love. My thoughts had only wandered for a brief moment, and there was no one left to protect Shen Zizhen by his side, while the gun in his hand had run out of bullets, but he still stubbornly protected me. Lan, actually, I transferred all my assets into your name a long time ago. The password is your birthday. I really love you so much, but someone like me has too many enemies. If it wasn't Annie today, there would be others tomorrow, so I made preparations for you early on. Your future will definitely be a happy one. If possible, I truly wish I could stay by your side forever. I know you've always wanted to escape from me. This is your chance. Lan, go. I looked at the unmanned helicopter behind me. As long as I stepped onto that helicopter, I could escape, yet my footsteps felt unusually heavy. If it weren't a life or death moment, I would have turned and run immediately. I watched Shen Zizheng shielding me, paving the way for my escape, yet I couldn't take that step no matter what. Shen Zizheng's gaze towards me was filled with starlight. He was happy, I could see it, but I didn't understand what there was to be happy about right now. He smiled and said, "You always say you don't love me, but when it really mattered, you never once abandoned me. Lan, what I regret most is agreeing to send you to Qiyu's side. Fortunately, in the end, you came back to me, but this time, I'm afraid we really have to part ways. Hurry, Lan." I watched Annie gradually approaching and shook my head at Shen Zizheng. "I can't do this to you. I can't leave you behind. If we go together." Shen Zizheng kissed my forehead. "Only if I stay here can you leave safely. At this moment, Annie is already close. No one can leave now." Annie has already had plastic surgery to restore her own face, but after multiple procedures, she can never return to how she was before. Her face stiffened, expressionless. "You will all die here today. No one can leave." Shen Zizheng ignored Annie, looking at me with deep affection. Lan, I gave you a chance to leave just now, but you didn't take it. From now on, you won't have another chance. I glanced over. Nonsense. Annie fired a shot into the air, drawing our attention. "I'm not here to watch you two show off your affection, Shen Zizheng. I'm giving you one more chance. As long as you are willing to marry me, I can pretend nothing ever happened, and you can live on." Annie, her obsession runs too deep. She has lost too much because of Shen Zizhi and Qiyu, so she must have this. Shen Zizhi's blood kept flowing, and by now his face was deathly pale, staggering even as he stood. I barely managed to support him, bearing his weight, but Annie pointed the gun at me. "However, Lan, you must disappear." Shen Zizhen's pupils contracted slightly, and he wrapped his arms around me, turning his back to Annie. Bang, a single shot. Shen Zizha was not injured, and neither was I. It was Annie. She had been shot. She looked down at the hole in her chest, slowly collapsed to the ground, and unwillingly closed her eyes. The group of assassins also fell one by one, shot down. I looked over. It was Shen Zizhen's mercenaries who had arrived. Seeing that he was safe, Shen Zizhen relaxed and smiled. The family doctor hurried over to bandage his wound and stop the bleeding. Before he passed out, I playfully whispered in his ear, "Bye-bye." He probably fainted from anger because of me. I knew he wouldn't die, so I quickly ran away. The world is so big, and there's so much money out there. He'll never find me. Goodbye, Shen Zizhi. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.